Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, welcoming you to the Knights of Last Call. Tonight, Knights of Last Call, Derek, Knights of Last Call. Welcome, everyone. It was weird. We didn't stream yesterday. Technically, we did stream like Wednesday morning. Sam's too tired to watch. We'll have the check out the VOD. Deuces, Sam. Thanks for stopping by. Welcome, everyone. So, yeah, today is our usual Thursday stream, and I kind of accidentally forgot. We've been streaming so much. My schedule's been kind of crazy and wild, and I kind of had to throw this together at the last minute. So we had a poll last week, and the number 2 most voted thing was to continue to talk about Shadowdark and specifically Project Shadowdeep. Even if you're not particularly interested in Shadowdark, then I think there still might be some value for you in this, because we're going to be talking about layout, and we're going to be talking about design of dungeons. And while I, in theory, envision a world in which we create a Shadowdark Megadungeon, which is to say a dungeon that comprises many multiple levels, is not intended to be completely explored or cleared out, and could reasonably serve as the basis for an entire multi-month, potentially even multi-year campaign, and I particularly think is very well suited to a true Western March style approach to gaming. Although we did get asked some good questions that I think we could do a whole tangent on, which is how do you handle people returning back to town at the end of a session in a mega dungeon, or even in a non-mega dungeon, in a exploration Western Marches style game. But regardless, I hope you get something valuable out of that, even if you're not necessarily interested in Shadowdark or mega dungeons. There's still, I think, going to be some interesting elements here about design. Maybe not as much stuff for, Powered by the Apocalypse and the like, but we'll figure out a schedule in a way that we can make these streams. Because if this becomes something, Vin was on earlier this week, and, he was really pressuring me to commit one way or the other. If this is something I'm going to do, and by is this something I'm going to do, basically he means like, actually try to design something, maybe try to publish something, or at least get something that people can play test and mess around with. It's it's a big goal for sure. But if we do end up doing that, I think it'd be really neat to share some of the design process, or at least a good portion of the design process with you all, especially our patrons. I would really hope that in a world where we were designing this is something that the patrons could help play test. And indubitably, I think a project of this scope would almost certainly engender sort of questions of, hey, can we convert this to 5e D&D? Hey, can we convert this to Pathfinder 2nd Edition? I think that's definitely where, having additional support, playtesters, design, et cetera, could be very, very useful. So, yeah, we'll continue to mess around with this. In the meantime, we've still got more role-playing advice, deep dives, first looks coming. We just did a first look on Tuesday for Ultraviolet Grasslands, and then next Tuesday, I'm trying to get Bob on the channel. So we've got a tip goal today, $50, and we'll get Bob back on the show. We'll get Bob on and see what he's been up to. We haven't had Bob on in a while. Or if you just want to throw some generic support for Shadowdark, the OSR, and that kind of content, we also have our super chat goal as well. You'll also notice, and I'm going to apologize for this several times. I hope not to be annoying about it, and I really, really am not going to beat you over the head with it that much, I promise. However, as some of you may know, I was laid off from my job in April of 2025, and so I have a decision to make, which is, go back to work for another corporation or try to make kind of a living out of maybe this YouTube thing, which is not something I ever really considered before. However, there are some avenues and paths that are available to me that I might be able to make work, and while I'll never be able to make up the difference, especially the healthcare benefits and all the like of having a real job, there's a certain amount of freedom and flexibility that comes with doing the YouTube thing, as well as this is a hobby and something that I'm super passionate about and I love. However, making it financially viable is, of course, the real challenge. Now, of course, if you want to support this channel, the single best way that you should do it, I think, is join the Patreon, because the Patreon is going to get you involved in our community in a deep level. It's going to get you involved with the other members of our community, many of whom are smarter, sexier, prettier, better, just better human beings than I ever will be. And a whole host of games, some games that I don't necessarily talk about or know that much about. If you're really interested in Call of Cthulhu, you might think, well, Derek's channel's not a good choice, Discord for me, because his Patreon's not a good Discord for me, because he never talks about Call of Cthulhu. That's true, but we have people who literally have run thousands of sessions of Call of Cthulhu who love our community. So there's an opportunity there for you to hopefully find not only your existing niche, but also find new niches and explore and play community games and all this other stuff. But I understand, as someone who just lost my job, the money is tight. However, many people do have Amazon Prime. And if you're not aware, if you have Amazon Prime, you are entitled once a month to give someone a free Amazon Prime sub. If your Amazon Prime account is linked to your Twitch account and you follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/nightsoflastcall, you can, once a month, give us your Amazon Prime sub. There's other paid options, but before you would pay that, I would hope you would join the Patreon. However, if you want to support this channel and you don't have the money or the time to potentially donate to our Patreon, which is totally understandable and totally fine, but if you can spare a few minutes, head over to Amazon Prime, head over to Twitch, connect your Amazon Prime account there, and, every couple weeks, maybe when you watch a show, head back over there and give us your Amazon Prime sub. So, hey, Sunhawk.
$50. Get the Red Mage on here.
I never thought to call Bob the Red Mage. That is so good. That may have to be his go-to thing. In fact, I may have to force him to change his Discord logo, because that is so good. Bob should totally be the Red Mage. Oh, it's so awesome. It's not like you literally just gave him his new nickname. That is amazing. That's awesome. This also means, well, we'll see. But when we do the Final Fantasy 1 game, if a Red Mage makes it into the party, and there's a good chance, because who doesn't love a good Red Mage, we may just need to, and especially if we're playing an old school emulator where we only have 4 characters for the name, we may have to call the Red Mage Bob. That may just be that may be written in stone. Well, thanks, Sunhawk. I will yell at Bob and I'll get him back on the show. Speaking of shows, next week I will probably only have one show, normal show, on Tuesday, because I'm going to be going to PAX. I'm going to be working the Roll for Combat booth with Mark Seifter and Stephen Glicker. We're going to be over there in Boston at the harbor. We're going to park a car at the harbor. Sorry. And I'm going to be flying in Wednesday, helping them set up the booth, running it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, coming back. So there's a very good chance that I will do a stream of some sort from the PAX floor. So keep an eye out, stay frosty. But that will affect some of our streaming schedule for next week. So anyways, thank you, Sunhawk. I really appreciate it. And congrats on renaming Bob. That's amazing. But if you want to support this channel, and you've always wanted to support this channel, and you're willing to spend a few minutes to do so, and you have Amazon Prime already, it doesn't cost you any money. It only costs Jeff Bezos money, and it gives me an extra, $2.25 or something. Not a lot, but if enough of you do it, maybe that can cover my new medical insurance or something like that. So I really appreciate it if you do spend a few moments for that. And I, again, will try not to, hammer this and beat you over the head with it. If you want to do it, go ahead and do it. If not, no hard feelings. Take care of it. All right. Welcome, everyone. Mark approves of my title. Thank you, Mark. That's all I do it for, Mark, is just for your approval. Papieski's here and just ending a PF2 session. Tomorrow, God's willing, we'll actually get together and make our PF2 characters. After that Boston accent, can I have my $50 back? Sure, I can send it right back over, Sunhawk. That's totally fine. Jackal Torn Moons, did we end up doing anything with those convention interviews? No, no, Jackal. I haven't had time. I mean, because I was at Gen Con, and when I came back, and that's when I had the panic attacks and the ER visits, and no, it's been sitting on an SD card for 8 months. So Jackal's referring to is when I went to Gen Con last year, I was only there for a couple days, but I brought my camera, I brought some microphones, some lavs, and I did interviews with small publishers and booths and stuff around the Gen Con convention hall. I may have done about 6 of them, maybe 7 interviews, and recorded it. I don't even remember some of the particular questions I asked at this point. And I was going to put together like a compilation stream, and my light kind of fell apart, and it's never kind of quit falling apart. But they are sitting there on an SD card. So Jackal, maybe, especially if it's unedited, if I just upload it, that's something I would do for the patrons for sure. Obviously, if I put something on the channel, I'd want to, actually edit it and, cut out some of the problems and, getting the mic ready and all that other stuff. But if it's unedited, then I can give it. Then the patrons can see the full scope of the horror. But yeah, I got that somewhere. It's probably with my SD and my lav mics. I don't think I've touched them since last year's Gen Con. I completely forgot about those. That's good. Oh, absolutely, Stan. Yeah, me, Mark, Steven, we're gonna tear it up. Although I've been told that PAX isn't much of a TTRPG convention. It's more of a video game convention, which means I will have very little to do there. Okay, let me. Speaking of PAX, there's the PAX floor plan. Apparently, we are going to be down like right here in the like 1100s or something. So if you're in Hall B, come find Roll for Combat. I will be there. Totally random, but I believe that many big convention centers aren't a great layout for Megadungeons. But when you include the booths, it starts to become more like a maze. But this is what made me think of this. Do you know what properties are huge? They're designed to be confusing, trap you in them, keep you from leaving, have many multiple entrances and exits. Casinos. So I actually think that casinos could be very, very, very good. Yeah, IKEA probably too. But yeah, casinos are I think a fantastic. IKEA is a great example too, by the way. Yes, I've been to a couple IKEAs, and that is a good way. They kind of move you through the store. You're not being forced. Museums, I think, is a good idea. That's actually not a bad idea either, OED. So I think there's a lot of places that are designed to sort of have a flow, even though you're totally free and no one's forcing you to go anywhere. They kind of have a form of railroading. It's like a implied railroading, which is a good thing, because you can ultimately do and go and stay wherever you want. If you want to stop, you can, stop at a piece and look at it for hours. Yeah, so the thing that I thought about IKEA is you have the main thorough aisles, but then there's those like side branches, which can very much act like a secret door or a secret passage that would allow you access into another area. Todd, yes. Yeah, so that's Todd, you are 100% correct. And it's especially important because tomorrow I have to get up early because my friend and I go see the Marvel movie that come out on Friday, and we're gonna go see the Marvel movie that comes out tomorrow, and we're getting up early to go watch it, so like before noon. People talk about the food at IKEA. I was never a huge fan. I didn't really particularly like the meatballs. I think that they were kind of sweet. I love the name. Glade Riven is dangerously sober. Love the title of the stream. Awesome. Well, hopefully it's not a gotcha. Ooh, Shadram, don't give me hope. Don't give me hope. The Marvel movies have been so disappointing. Like Guardians 3 was good, but that wasn't a fun time. Guardians 3 was like a depressing movie. It was not fun. I don't want to be depressed. All right, let me change this. Okay. No, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Okay. All right. Matt, I have not watched anything on television in like the last thing I watched on television was the final season of Game of Thrones. And even then I didn't own HBO Max. I watched it over my buddy's house. I have never seen a Disney Plus anything. I've not seen any of the Marvel Disney Plus. I've not seen any of the Star Wars at all. So I know nothing. I know nothing. That being said, do Twitch subs get any on-screen notification banner things? Jackal tournaments, I do not think so. Currently, my stream elements are still only configured to, I think, to Twitch or to YouTube. But I could probably figure that out. There's a lot of stuff on Twitch I don't know anything about yet, and I'm kind of working on it. And so, we'll figure out what we can do with Twitch. Sorry. It wasn't actually meant to be like all up in your face like that. All right. I was just bringing it down because this is a new little reminder tab for me, for you, for all of us. All right. Subliminal message in slow motion. Yes, exactly. Oh yeah, Beowulf. My goal is to get to like, eventually get to maybe 200. Yeah, we're at 50 on basically day one, so I think that's awesome. Twitch Premium sub does currently not trigger an overlay message. Well, gee, thanks, Strat. We'll get it working. And again, there's a lot of cool stuff that I love YouTube and I will continue to use YouTube. Sorry, I'm gonna hop back. I love YouTube and I will continue to use YouTube, particularly for our long form content. And because so many people watch these on VODs, I think it's really important that we use YouTube because Twitch no longer maintains or Twitch no longer keeps VODs active for more than I think 10 days or something. And obviously, a lot of people catch our content via VODs, and people re-reference old shows, and that's how we find new people. So with Twitch not showing VODs or not saving VODs, YouTube is still going to be our primary account. That being said, there are so many more cool little widgets and fun things that we can do with Twitch that we can't do with YouTube. YouTube kind of has shit all over their live content. So you do get little stars by your name. There you go. So that's at least something. But like I said, we'll figure out. I'll definitely figure out some fun ways to try to highlight what people what people are and what people do. But again, that's that. All right. So we were looking at. Let me rename this. All right. So, this was our original. Oh, look at that! I forgot about our. I forgot about our logo. There we go. Project Shadowdeep. In effect, Sunhawk is our hype boss. In case, so we originally were talking about doing a 10 level dungeon, and then we kind of expanded it to 11 levels because we said, why not make ours go to 11? And the original design that we did was talking about just the sort of generic layout and structure of the dungeon. So let's kind of call this, profile dungeon. So what I thought we could do tonight, and we can kind of discuss some of these things, is talk about how we might go about designing an individual level. And again, we haven't really designed any like elements for this dungeon yet in terms of like actual stuff. We are simply talking about the high level design of what the layout's going to be and what that's going to look like once that layout is written out. Level 7 bar and grill. Because I think that fundamentally we talked about, do we want to design bottom up or down, bottom up or down up, top down or bottom up. And in a top down dungeon, you start with thematic ideas and you really want your dungeon to look like this, or you really want your dungeon to look like that, which is a fine way to design it. But I think what you end up focusing then there is, and they both hopefully should arrive, at the same place. It's just a matter of what you're more comfortable with. However, I'm a gamist in many respects, and I fundamentally believe that dungeons, particularly Megadungeons, aren't really about the theme as much as they are as an interesting play space where player agency, strategic decisions, tactical decisions all combine with the concepts of exploration and problem solving to create an interesting environment for fun encounters, fun sessions, and a real feeling of progress that occurs not just with your character's level, but with your ability to sort of master the dungeon. If you've never played in a dungeon setting over multiple sessions, it may surprise you to learn that there's a surprisingly large amount of enjoyment that can come from feeling like you have mastered the dungeon. Not your PC, you have mastered the dungeon. And it's idiosyncrasies, its ins and outs, and its little quirks and things to watch out for, and the telltale signs of a problem before they begin. And you develop this familiarity. It's almost like a 10,000 hour type thing. Is this a TTRPG or Hollow Knight? What is Hollow Knight? It is capitalized, so I am assuming that means something. I don't know what that means either. Oh, it is a video game. Well, then it is certainly not that, because I don't know what video games are. Oh, well then if it's a popular video game, I definitely don't know what it is. No, this is a profile dungeon level view that has been around since the 1970s, pretty much. Just a way of visualizing the levels and the connections between the levels in a multi-level, dare I say, mega dungeon level experience of a dungeon level. I gotcha. I understand that a little bit better. You'd hate it, Derek. It's fun. Fair enough. So let us, and I have no idea, no promises are going to be made about how successful we will be tonight. That's why we're here, right? All right. All right. So, Shadowdeep level 1. And as a reminder, the way that we had initially sort of envisioned level 1, and none of this is written in stone. We can work kind of forwards and backwards as we need be. But level 1 is currently connected to the surface in 3 different ways. It has 3 different entrances, if you want to call them that. We have one entrance in this sort of above ground ruins. We have another entrance in the above ground ruins, perhaps deeper or more hidden. I envision this. And then we have a sort of naturalistic entrance. So I'm envisioning that these white lines represent stairways or shafts or something man-made, something constructed, a definite way that the dungeon is entered. And this I don't want to say it's not deliberate, but it's more of a naturalistic passage. It's a cave. It's maybe some sort of cave system that, eventually connects to the dungeon. Maybe when they were burrowing out level 1, it accidentally connected to the cave. Or maybe they purposely made it connect to the cave as a secret way to get out or in or smuggle in resources. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons and ways. Or it could have been accidental. It could have been an animal or some creature or some natural force or explosion that sort of, and eventually broke it in to the level. And then additionally, on level 1, we talk about there being 2 exits. And typically entrances mean ways to get into the level that lead you further up, and exits kind of mean connections from the level that lead further down. And we envision there to be 2 primary ones, both natural. One here, and again, this positioning here doesn't really mean much. It's more of an abstract concept. But we did note that with this, and again, a lot of my design on anything, let alone dungeon design, but anything, is stolen from cool ideas and concepts that I saw in other games that I really, really liked. And while Abomination Vaults was not the first game to do it, I've seen several games do it. It is one that I played recently that really stuck out in my head. And this is the idea of a dungeon connection that goes between levels, in this case levels 1, 2, and 3B, that is immediately accessible. And that's what we mean by this line here. So the idea is, if you want to be more, kind of think of this more specifically, imagine if this was a winding spiral staircase that wound down from level 1 all the way down to level 3B, but it stopped off at level 2. And so that means that when you find this connection point, you immediately not only have access to level 2, but if you want, you can go straight down to level 3B with only the briefest of moments on level 2. Essentially, it just goes straight through. Or if we want to make this more difficult, it could be a shaft that the players have to figure out, climb their way down. Maybe there's an old elevator of sorts. It could be magical, but it could also be like a dumbwaiter. But maybe the elevator is currently stuck at the bottom, and once they get down there, they could go up there. And so there's this idea of multi-level transport that once you find this entrance, you immediately could potentially get yourself into more danger. And one of the advantages that we hope to take advantage of in a game like Shadowdark is, unlike a game like Pathfinder 2, level is very important. The math is very tight. And so if you had a group of level 1 party members, PCs, and they discovered so you would imagine that the creatures on level 1 are going to be low, moderate, severe encounters for a level 1 party. A low, moderate, or severe encounter for a level 3 party is going to be almost certainly death or nearly death for a level 1 party in Pathfinder 2. So if a level 1 party in Pathfinder 2 discovers this entrance and were to go immediately from level 1 down to level 3, I think, while it's theoretically possible, they would have a really, really hard time just numerically and just because of the math. However, some games, like 5th edition D&D and Shadowdark and many other old school games, the math is not tight. And it is very conceivable that a level 1 party could have some high degree of success on level 3, especially if you're playing a game, and this doesn't necessarily have to be OSR, but if you're playing a game that almost encourages or allows for players to avoid combat and gives you lots of tools to do so. Because while the threats on level 3 may be very dangerous, the treasure or the rewards are subsequently much better. And that means that there is sort of an incentive, if you find this, to go down to level 3 and not be like, well, this will instantaneously kill us if we were to go there. So that's what we currently have. And that means that and then lastly, super abstractly, we put in these blue shapes that represent this idea of some form of teleportation matrix or network that connects various parts of the game or the dungeon. This might not be something that is available until much later on in the dungeon, but the idea that level 1 can somehow foreshadow or preview level 7, which is what the idea is, that at some point these 2 beacons could be activated, and then players would have the ability to transport directly from level 1 all the way to level 7. Now, even in an OSR game, that would be pretty suicidal right off the rip. But if the players figured out a way to activate that much sooner than getting down to level 7, then that could potentially provide them with a very scary way, especially if this teleporter is one way. We haven't really discussed that, but in any case, that's kind of the idea here. This book contains pages. These pages are on words. These words are on pages. Some of the pages have art. The art is nice. Some call it Jaquazing, some call it Xandering. I call it a multi-cursal maze. Yes, I mean the principles that Janelle Jaquays used in her seminal work, Caverns of Thracia, and that were propounded upon by Alexander. Not Jason Alexander. That's the comic. What the hell's that guy's name? Something Alexander. The Alexandrian is kind of the details that we're talking about here. Justin. I said Jason, and I knew it was a J word. We did an entire memorial stream to Janelle, and we talked about her work. We talked about her art. We talked about Caverns of Thracia. So we did an entire Caverns of Thracia, Jaquazing the Dungeon retrospective. So cool stuff. Beowulf says all the levels from level 4 down have to have sections that are submerged or have hallways filled with knee or waist deep water and things moving in the water. Well, not always. I mean, level 4 for sure. I mean, because that connects to our lake. That's right. I just like the word multi-cursal. Yeah, that's fine. Like recursive, multi-cursal. All right. So thanks. I don't need your help. Why are you doing this to me? Okay, thank you. So the idea here is to think about generic layout, and I'm going to try to keep this somewhat. So first things first, we should make a key that makes sense for all of us. And our choices here are going to be to use squares, diamonds, or circles. I think I'm going to use squares for rooms. Oh, that's not that. There we go. Rooms. I can't type. We're gonna have circles be what's a good way to describe an entrance or an exit? Is there a word that means both at the same time? No, not like a door. I mean, from the level. And this will be... Oh, that's terrible. I'm just going to put access isn't bad, but we'll just put entrances. I mean, this is just for our uses anyways. All right. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, and what we're really trying to do here, yes, it's a transitional space. It's a vertical transitional space. So again, one of the things that we're talking about here is this idea of making the layout itself fun and enjoyable. And we may have to come up with our own lingua franca to just kind of discuss how we're going to use these. And the primary elements that I'm going to be using in order to kind of lay out the dungeon is the concept of Jaquazing. And, you know, to explain that for people who don't necessarily know that, what that means or have used the space, it's this idea of avoiding linear paths. So a classic example of a non-Jaquazed dungeon might look something like this. And right, and you enter the dungeon here. Right, that's our entrance, and then oh, guess what that is? That turns out that's our big bad boss here at the end. And there are choices to be made, right? Like you could go explore this room, or not, or you could go explore this room or not. But fundamentally, there are no loops. There are no different ways to sort of attack the dungeon. You have to go through these rooms. There's a definite beginning. There's a definite ending, right? And that's what we want to kind of avoid. And one of the ways that we simply do this is by, number one, including additional rooms and additional ways to connect things. And we include additional entrances and exits. So we'll say here, we'll avoid linear paths and we'll avoid single entrances. So that's what we mean by that. So for example, we can add an entrance down here. We'll add another room here. We'll add another room there. And we'll add another room here. And then when we start connecting these up, suddenly it's a lot harder to tell where the end point of the dungeon is. Because it could be this room, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's this room. Or is it, this room? And keep in mind, we have an entrance down here, so we can enter the dungeon from here. And already we have a situation here where the dungeon becomes a lot more interesting. The choices that the players make become much more meaningful. And especially if you were to do something like make this connection here a secret door or something like that connects this area to this area, because now you're bypassing potentially a number of encounters. To get to this room normally, you would have had to go through, assuming you were here, you'd have to go through this room and then go through this room, or you'd have to go through this room and go through this room. So you've potentially ignored 2 encounters. And from an old school style play, this is really important because generally speaking, let's say that there's treasure here that we want access to. Well, if there's treasure here and then there's, there's traps here and monsters here. Well, monsters and traps are dangerous and don't give us as much experience, and we would just as soon avoid that stuff. And so a secret door essentially becomes a real prize or victory because we're able to avoid the encounters we don't want to have the, to find the thing that we do want to have. And I know it seems kind of strange, right? You're like, well, no, isn't D&D all about fighting monsters? Sort of, but only as a kind of in a last resort. I mean, there's been some idea of like combat as a fail state. Is that a problem? No, some people want to fight, and that's fine. I think that, a lot of, I think OSR games get a little bit too preachy about, or the OSR communities get a little too preachy about combat as a fail state. And, you should be trying to avoid fighting at all different, respects. I don't think that's realistic. And I don't think that's how the game was played at any point in the game's history, because again, it you have characters that are fighting, and you have definitely a strong emphasis on killing monsters. And I think there's an advantage to be had there as well, which is sometimes killing a monster means that you don't have to worry about that monster later. So, well, I don't want to encourage that too much. I do think that there's something to be said about that. So that's the step number 1. And then step number 2 is going to be cyclical design principles. And this is the idea of creating loops and reusing dungeon elements. Keys. Locks. if you've ever played a game like Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, then or any Legend of Zelda, you are very familiar with cyclical design, even if you don't already know what a cyclical design element would look like. Basically, cyclical design is the idea that, and I mean, in the most basic example of this would be that you have, I'm going to delete all this here. Oh, you have to completely surround it with a box. Interesting. I thought it would be like Adobe, where if you do it the one way, or SketchUp, where if you do it the one way, it does that way. So let's say that we have our room here off of our entrance, and let's do a really, this is like the most simplistic version of this that we could possibly imagine, right? There's a connection here. It's dotted, right? This is a raised drawbridge. And our treasure, capital T, is here. Our treasure is here. And so right from the beginning, when we enter the dungeon, we can see the drawbridge. And so then we have a dungeon that, say, goes like this. Why did that make a double arrow? Interesting. Okay. And here we have, in this room, we have the lever that raises the drawbridge. And so, number one, we've created a loop. Number two, we've also created a situation where the party might start here in this room, and then they're going to proceed. You know, they see that there's a raised drawbridge. They go, okay, we need to find the lever to go raise the drawbridge. So they go into this room, and then they go into this room, and then they go into the lever room, and then they pull the lever, and then they come back. They come back to the first room or the first chamber. Now, how do we, and again, this is like Zelda 101 here, right? But we can make this, I mean, this is a very simplistic statement for sure, but you can start to see how you could start to create loops within loops, and you can create connections, and you can create consequences that occur from the lever raising the drawbridge. For example, let's say that back in this room, we draw another room off of it, and that room also has a connection in it. And when the players go through this room, they see that there is a sealed door here. Maybe they can hear a monster, or maybe there's some sort of sign that there's some sort of scary monster, or maybe it's, you know, it's magic. So, you know, maybe it's behind some sort of invisible wall or wall of force, or maybe it's in some sort of jail cell, or maybe it's on the other side of a platform with a raised drawbridge. And the players get to the lever and they realize, okay, so if we throw the lever, we're going to maybe lower the drawbridge to the treasure chamber, but maybe that also lowers the drawbridge to this scary monster. And so now the path back has changed. Now it's not the same element or the same place that we kind of went back through. It might be the same location, but the nature of the encounter has changed. And then what if the lever, okay, is locked? What if, in order for the lever to work, and we're being very, very literal here, but let's just, you know, a lock can be a lot of different things. But let's say that for the lever to operate, there's a key that needs to be turned. Well, now we need to go find the key before we can find the lever. And we already went the way that we went. So what if the key is stored in a chamber over here? And the key to the lock is in here. And so, of course, we could make it very simple, and we could just draw that line and say, okay, that connects to that. But what if, instead, we gave the player circles and choices? And again, we're being very, very simplistic here. But what if, instead, we said, okay, what if the key was like this? And now, when you go this way, maybe left is a certain type of encounter. Maybe right is a certain type of encounter. Maybe left is monsters. Right is traps. And if you might, if you're wondering, how would you ever possibly know that? Well, then watch my video on how we used to dungeon. Now, of course, remember, we want to avoid linear paths. We want to create groups. We want to recycle design. So what if we, this looks like a cool option. What if we add a connection right from the first room, right into the monsters room? The players may find the key, right? Let's say the players go this room, and then they go into this room, and then they go into this room and find a key. They might find the key before they ever find the lock, before they found the lever. So they might be looking for something that can raise the drawbridge, and they find the key before they even know it's locked. So that's kind of cool, because now they're like, well, shit, we found a key. Now, once they find a key, they're like, where do I use it? So it works either way, because if they find the lock, they're going to go, I want to keep exploring this dungeon because I want to find the key. But if they find the key first, they're going to naturally go, I want to find what this key unlocks. Either way, it gives the players the incentive to keep revisiting and re-going through the dungeon. And that's really, really cool, because this starts to give them this idea and this feeling of mastery as they make their way through the dungeon multiple times. And when you include things like random encounters, particularly dynamic random encounters, as well as things that can change or update the dungeon depending on the player's passage through it, then you have this really, really, really interesting dynamic environment that the players are going to feel like exploring multiple times over and over again without it becoming boring. And one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of the reason I think that people are anti-dungeon is because they have either run dungeons with their group or they've created them, which is in some ways worse. And the players have essentially speed run the dungeon. They avoided most of it, or maybe they cleared it all out, but whatever. You used it once, it was one and done, and then they beat the monster at the end and they got the thing and they never came back to the dungeon. Well, that is a reasonable reason to not want to use dungeons, because you did not get a lot of juice for your squeeze. I can tell you that I've had dungeons which have been, almost like I almost did too much prep because I even created a second level. Like, my players continued to use and reuse and revisit locations on level 1 over and over and over and over again, because they kept coming back. They kept having to leave. They kept coming back. And then the situation will change. The situation will update. What was used to not be a threat becomes a threat. Something that was previously closed becomes open, and it becomes much, much more interesting of an environment. And you can get a lot of mileage out of a very, very small amount of material. So hopefully that makes some degree of sense. Sorry if I'm missing chat here. Strat says, I think combat is a fail state is overly simplified. Combat that you might lose is a fail state seems more appropriate. And OSR games put that on the player, while PF2 bakes that into the game. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think, well, there's two thoughts to that. One, yes, obviously a combat that you might lose, but also two, right, the idea that all resources are precious. Resource ablation is the name of the game. And if you get into a combat, you're setting up a situation where you're going to lose hit points, spell slots, or other forms of resources which aren't as easily replenished. And you're not really necessarily gaining a whole lot. And so in that respect, any amount of resource loss that isn't going to translate into essentially experience point gain is kind of viewed as a loss. Now, like I said, in old school games, monsters were worth some amount of experience points. Not a ton, but some. Whereas I think in Shadowdark, I don't think they're worth any. So Shadowdark actually makes it really, really a case where fighting almost does you no good, unless there's a real reason for you to want those monsters to be dead. for some, fiction reason. And I don't necessarily mean like, oh my God, I killed my family. No, I mean like, you're like, I'm tired of dealing with these, I'm tired of dealing with these rats. Let's go, wipe out the rat nest. I'm tired of dealing with these goblins. Let's go kill the chieftain and drive them out of the dungeon. Jackal, what is your favorite Final Fantasy 1 dungeon? I mean, my top 3 are. Hey, Agile Monk, thank you. You deserve some love for the YouTube algorithm as they measure you based on chat payments made, seeing as how they take 45% of them. Thank you for what you do, my friend. You are a boon to the hobby. Well, Agile Monk, thank you so much for that. That's very, very generous of you. And yes, it is true. YouTube does take a lot of the cut, but I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for the support. I love it. And again, $10, $15, $25 at a time. That's how I'm going to try to make, my bills paid. It's very strange to go from like being like, oh, these, people gave me a chat and people gave me a super chip and like, oh, cool. Like maybe I'll buy a nice pair of roller skates this year. Maybe I'll splurge a little extra at a dinner in Vegas, and now being like, cool, that basically, that's starting to pay for my electric bill. So it's a very different feeling for sure, but I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys continue to find value from this channel. So thank you, Agilmon. What is my favorite Final Fantasy 1 dungeon? Well, the short list, is Marsh Cave, Ice Cave, Earth Cave, Fire Volcano, Guguru Volcano. Marsh Cave is just so iconic. It's so hard, and like you have to grind forever, and you can still die, and the poison just traps you, just drags you down. But the Ice Cave has sorcerers that can instantly kill you. So I really do like the Ice Cave. I'm gonna have to say Marsh Cave. I think Marsh Cave is the definitive, dungeon. But Marsh Cave and Ice Cave, I think, are just really stand out because, they are so tough. And, you can really put in a lot of time grinding, and I like to grind outside of Elftown to level up and get, silver swords and silver armor, and certainly 99 cures and maybe not 99 pures, but a good chunk of them. But the Marsh Cave is still pretty tough, and it's a big space, and if you don't know what you're doing, and you just get worn down by all the oozes and spiders and undead, and it's a nasty dungeon. And like I said, the Ice Cave has just, you're kicking ass, you're taking names, you're probably taking out 2 of the fiends potentially by now, maybe, and then boom, all of a sudden, you're getting auto killed by sorcerers who are basically mind flayers, basically, for those of you who don't know, and they're psionic blasting you and stunning your party and paralyzing everybody. So both are very, very fun in the super way that they're challenging, and I think that makes it fun because it's that's cool. Junderlin, thank you. An hour behind, showing my support for this topic. Well, Junderlin, hopefully you catch up on 2 times 2, and we'll get you caught up. Look at this, level 2 janitor, and I'm not surprised. They know what's up. Marsh Cave being such a difficulty spike makes it really memorable. Same with the Ice Cave. Yeah, so I think both of those really stand out. They're a lot of fun. I kind of don't like the end of the game dungeons. I think Temple of Fiends the final Temple of Fiends is forgettable. The Mirage Tower is, obviously like the whole getting beamed up and suddenly you're on a floating platform in space is supposed to be like this big, like, what? The Sky Warriors were astronauts. That kind of maybe went over my head when I was a kid. I just didn't really put it together. And now that I'm an adult, the shock value of it is not nearly as shocking. Maybe. The water dungeons is kind of crappy. Castle Ordeals is a cool dungeon too with the teleporters. So, do you think, to follow up on Jackal, do you think Final Fantasy dungeons, specifically the older titles, are a good model for TTRPG dungeons? Not most of them. Maybe Final Fantasy 1, but you know, when I think about the dungeons from Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VI, they're pretty dang linear. I mean, like the only real choice that you have to do is like, do you walk down this little hallway to get this extra treasure chest, which might have an item, but usually it's like an ether or a tent or something at that point in the game. It's very rarely like, you know, something really, really good. And for the most part, they're pretty linear. And honestly, I think they're pretty short most of the time. And I don't really recall any dungeon in Final Fantasy IV has the two dungeons that I can remember being very tough are the dungeon you have to go through to get down to the land of summon monsters in the underground, and of course the what is it called, like the magnetic cave where the dark elf is, where you can't use metal weapons and everybody has to use like crappy hammers and stuff. That I think is a really cool dungeon, but other than that, it's like tough. It's not that tough, I should say. Do you think Forbidden Lands can do Shadowdark better than Shadowdark? I don't know what that means, but my guess is no. I don't know what Shadowdark is trying to do better than Forbidden Lands. I mean, very different games. One's a dice pool system, one's a D20 system. One has hit points, one does not. One has injury tables, one does not. I mean, I think they're kind of very different in that respect. I did play Final Fantasy Tactics several times. Now that's cool. That is very cool. So those are going to be those are going to be sort of our approach here as we kind of think about how we want to align stuff. And we're going to just be thinking about ways to lay stuff out in a way that hopefully is cool and interesting and we find fun and enjoyable. All right, so let's pretend that this is our main stairwell. And, oh, you know what, actually? We're just real quick, kind of from a high level perspective. Because remember, this is a very long thing. We may have to do some math here. Oops, accidentally. I talked about how I wanted there to be probably 500 like rooms in the dungeon, just because I think that's a good tagline number, you know, over 500 rooms. I think that sounds cool. So we have 11 levels, and so roughly we can think of that as about, you know, 40 to 50, right? If we did 50 rooms per level, that'd be 550. So that'd be too much. So let's just say 45, right? What is 45 times 11? 495. So we're very close with that. We can tweak it up and down from that as well. So 45 dungeon rooms per level would be our base. But remember, we did talk about how some levels are going to be bigger, right, than others. So like we can see, level 9B is not going to be 45 rooms, whereas level 2 is supposed to be bigger than level 1. Level 2 and 5 are in particular fairly large levels. 9A is as well. But level 1 is a little bit on the smaller side. So that means that from a design perspective, we can think of level 1 as probably being in the, you know, maybe the 30 to 35 room range. Or something around those lines, something around that limitation. And we can have bigger levels, we can have smaller levels. So that's one thing we have to keep in mind. Okay, so the next thing that we want to keep in mind when we talk about designing this, because remember, this is a bottom-up design, which means we need to think about the particulars. So let me bring up Shadowdark. Now this is where I am not the super expert, but hopefully we can figure it out together. All right, so this is the Shadowdark RPG. move it onto the right thing. So Shadowdark RPG, we're starting at level 1. I'm going to assume that we don't use the 0th level characters thing because, I hate that. And if people really wanted to do this, we could have like an adventure in the ruins. Remember how like our dungeon had like the ruins of adventure, the ruins of some old fortress or some old thing or something like that on the top level. If people really want to do, we can always design that later on. But if people really want to be able to do that, we can always just, include that as something that they do up here in the ruins. But I'm not going to worry about that. Okay. So to level up, to go from level 1 to level 2, we need 10 XP. So we require 10 XP. That means, Jesus, I guess that got deleted. Excalidraw is cool, but some parts of it are not cool. All right. So this requires 10 XP to level to 2. And that means fundamentally at a generic level, there should be more than 10 XP that the players can earn on level 1. And the reason is because number 1, we can't expect them, and we don't expect them to explore every single part of level 1. So that's number 1. Number 2, we want to give the players the ability to explore level 1. Maybe they find enough experience points, they level up. Now they're level 2. Now they can continue to explore on level 1, but level 2 is calling, and the experience points are going to be better, if you will, on level 2. And the reason why that's important is because to get to level 3, you need 20 experience points more. I should also note that when you gain a level, your XP resets back to 0. So you need 10 to get to level 2. You need 20 to get to level 3. So that means that the experience point density of the lower levels has to be, and by that I mean like, the the lower levels, man, D&D is full of these things. Of the deeper levels, right, has to be higher than it of the Jesus Christ. Of the experience point density of the lower, of the deeper levels has to be higher than that of the upper levels, because we want to encourage the players to dig deeper. They could stay on level 1. If they could stay on level 1 and still earn just as much experience points on level 1 as they could on level 2, then why would they ever go to level 2? So something that we have to be kind of considering here is, Jackal, that's exactly what I was thinking about, is the order of the stick comment. Like how much did we have to go through because nobody at TSR looked up a level in the thesaurus? That's a tongue tie. It's a tongue tie twister. Well, it's also confusing for me because I have to manage Excalidraw, the PDF, chat, and then also OBS and show you guys this. And this stuff should be on my Stream Deck so I can toggle between these things quickly, but it is not. So that's my fault. Now, how do we earn XP in Shadowdark? I mean, I know the answer. It's rhetorical, but there is a page, and I just wanted to bring it up. At least I thought there was a page. Here we go. Morning XP. So, characters gain XP from valuable treasure and boons they earn during adventure. XP doesn't need to reflect monetary value. Boons or fabled items have intangible worth. Treasure has 4 categories: poor, normal, fabulous, legendary, worth 0, 1, 3, and 10. I think the jump from 3 to 10 is a bit much, and we should probably use something a little bit in between as well. Each PC gets the full XP value of each treasure. When PCs gain a new level, their XP resets to 0. Sources of XP include golds and gem, cool. Magic items, cool. Meaningful trophies and tokens. Clever thinking, award 1 XP for ingenious actions. And oaths, secrets, and blessings. So this means, as designed, Shadowdark is encouraging our players to do the following. It's encouraging them to find gold and gems. It's encouraging them to find magic items. It's encouraging them to find cool trophies that might not have monetary value, but have cool, swagger value. And then oaths, discovering secrets, and blessings. So we can, framework our XP awards based around these ideas. In addition, clever thinking, but that's kind of outside of the design of the game. Over time, PCs will earn and lose gold through adventuring, carousing, and buying new gear. Per treasure find, each group should gain about 10 GP times their average party level in value, or 20 GP for levels 0 to 3. And we can see here as an example, a bag of silver might be useful. You might gain silver, but that's not worth any experience points because that's not cool enough. Finding a dagger is technically treasure, but it's not treasure enough to trigger the treasure. No. For 1 experience point, we need to find a bag of gold, a fine gem, a fine suit of armor, a magical scroll. To find a fabulous, to get 3 XP, we should find a magic sword, a giant diamond, a mithril chainmail, maybe a big chest of gold. And then there really should be something between fabulous and legendary. And in fact, my predilection, just because of years of playing Magic the Gathering and World of Warcraft and EverQuest, is to talk about these things in terms of common, uncommon, rare, mythic, legendary. And then at the top you have, the Staff of Ord, a genie's wish, a dragon's hoard. So there's kind of a logarithmic approach here to the treasure. Because if a bag of gold is 1 XP, presumably a dragon's hoard is many, 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 many bags of gold. And you're like, well, if we were just going by the bag of gold standard, it would be 50 XP, but it's not, right? Theoretically, the most experience points that you're going to be able to get is 10. So what does this tell us? Well, it tells us that on the low levels of the dungeon, by that I mean the upper floors of the dungeon, when the party is low level, we probably shouldn't have much treasure down here. We should have most of our treasure be in this range, 0, 1, 2, or 3. And per treasure find, each group should gain about 10 GP times their average party level in value. And we can use 20 GP as sort of a baseline as they find a treasure find. All right, so keeping that in mind. This is where I get kind of frustrated because I want to use my whiteboard so badly here. It's just quicker for me than typing, but let me see how badly this works. The problem is they have a drawing tool here. All right, that's not too bad. Okay. So what I'm envisioning then is for level 1, we have 0 XP treasure finds, 1 XP treasure finds, 3 XP treasure finds. I'm going to include a 5 XP treasure find, and we're going to put the 10 XP. And again, I'm kind of repurposing the language of Shadowdark here, but I'm going to call this a common treasure, an uncommon treasure, a rare treasure, a mythic treasure, and a legendary treasure. So, Kermel. And on level 1, so this is sort of our frequency of distribution. So I'm envisioning that at level 1, we should probably have a distribution that looks something like this. So we should have a lot of stuff between 0 and 1, treasures that are going to get you, certain minor treasures that will put some money in your pouch, but aren't really going to be worth any XP. And by the way, this doesn't just have to include treasures, right? It can also include magic items, and it could also include things like boons or oaths or weird blessings and stuff like that we can include. But that doesn't mean that I think that and even though this number is very low, that doesn't necessarily mean that this doesn't have to be 0. In fact, I kind of like the idea that there is something on level 1 that is what we would call a mythic treasure. It might be super rare. It might be really hard to get. It might be difficult to find, but it might be there. Furthermore, I like how that integer value graph has a peak. Well, yes, but this is a continuous probability function, right? Once we break this down into a discrete probability density function, right, we would naturally bar chart it, and then it would have definitive elements. So right now it is just a continuous function, but obviously it can't be continuous because we don't have partial values. It would have to be discrete. However, I am also kind of a sadist. And again, some of these tactics and techniques are things that I've been using for a long time. And one idea that I absolutely love doing on level 1 of the dungeon is putting a legendary, what Shadowdark would call a legendary treasure right there on level 1. And in fact, it's not hidden. I like for the party to be able to discover it or find it. And in a way, this is kind of the sword in the stone approach, where you put this treasure right near the beginning of the game, right in everyone's face, but it is inaccessible through a variety of means, most likely magical. Not just, it's behind a really, maybe it's sealed behind some really impressive doors, but, something that is, but then how are they seeing it, right? So something that is out of place in an otherwise kind of relatively mundane level. But to me, this is like that ultimate sign of foreshadowing. This is something that really early on, one player in your group, maybe the whole group, gets really fixated or focused in on, I want to, let's just call it the sword and the stone. I want that sword. That is kind of like become my personal player goal, if not my PC's goal in this dungeon. And when we talked about before about the locks and the keys, it doesn't seem apparent to you, but this is a lock. And it's a way to sort of foreshadow it and say, this is a way that you can encourage players to continue to explore your dungeon, because they say, look at this cool sword. Maybe you even hint or straight up tell the players what it does or what it's capable of doing. And it's right there. All they have to do is engage with your content, engage with the dungeon, explore it, figure things out, master it, and the sword could be theirs. Now, that's not to say that there might not be some groups that might try to pull some stupid shenanigan stuff to skip your dungeon and, figure out some bullshit way to get your sword out. And from that perspective, that's just a call on you as a GM. How much wiggle room do you want to give players to come up with stuff outside of the box and stuff outside of the system? Again, that is kind of an individual decision. Obviously, the game or the dungeon would set forth the parameters and do a certain amount of experience so that it can't just be immediately dealt with. But in some cases, particularly if the PCs are high level, like let's use a D&D example. Let's say we literally had some sort of magical sword and a magical stone. I wouldn't expect for, some 5th level PC to come up and cast a simple level 2 or level 3 stone shape spell and be like, morph the sword out. On the other hand, if the sword was like lower and it wasn't legendary treasure, it was just a rare treasure, and a party member got high enough level to cast stone shape and just kind of morphed it out, I actually kind of am okay with that. You did beat the puzzle. You leveled up. You got high enough level that you just pulled it out, right? Or maybe you make the strength check to pull it out, DC 30, and eventually somebody just gets strong enough and they are able to make a DC 30 check. Okay, cool. Like that. To me, this isn't a loser situation. I'm kind of like, yeah, you guys did it. Obviously, if we're talking about a legendary treasure, I wouldn't want it to be something as simple as a stone-shaped spell. But if you had some high-level spell, like if they went there and cast Wish to remove the weapon, yeah, I think I'd be like, yeah, I mean, that's cool. Like if you've basically already beaten it, you're just being lazy and using your magic, I think that's totally fine. So we have to decide as a function of density how our XP is distributed amongst these. And we said that for level 1, we were talking about 30 to 35 rooms, right? So we're talking about 30 to 35 rooms. So what that means, there's a bunch of different ways that you could do this. But one idea that I really like is we know that level 1 characters need 10 XP to become level 2. Level 2 characters need 20 XP to go to level 3. I kind of like the idea of including 30 XP on level 1. Number 1, that gives us a little bit more room to play with. Number 2, it means that in the unlikely event that the players did decide to literally just stay on level 1 until they essentially cleared it out, which is fine. That is a choice that they can make. They will essentially be kind of rewarded for that by getting to level 2, level 3, before they even go to level 2 of the dungeon. And since we have 30 XP to spend and we're having 30 to 35 rooms, it means that on average, right, the density is about 1 XP per room, roughly. So that's the other question. How dense do we want this treasure to be? Because we could have a 30 to 35 room dungeon, and there's one room with 30 XP in it. And then the other 29 rooms have 0 XP. Remember, that doesn't necessarily mean no treasure, because like you might find a small, unvaluable gem or minimal value gem or a bag of silver, which isn't worth any XP. We could go this route, right, where we could hyper focus it, or you could literally put 1 XP in every room. And while I think both of those extremes are bad ideas, at least initially, I do think that how you spread out, how you sort of densify what's the density of your treasure means a great deal, because we could split this. Is there an eraser? Yeah, there is an eraser. We could split this into, can I make this eraser bigger? No. We could split this into, 3 rooms. We could split this into 5 rooms. We could split this into 10 rooms. So how dense the treasure is kind of sets the tone. And I'm a big fan of using this idea of, treasure, you can call them caches, I guess, or hoards. I don't like to nickel and dime the party. I don't like to give them a dime, a dime, a dime, a dime, a dime, a dime, a dime. I like to give them kind of nothing, kind of nothing, kind of nothing, kind of nothing. Boom, here's a big reward. And the reason I like to do that is because I like to put these treasure caches and hoards in places and locations that are designed as such that a clever party, an intelligent party, of players might be able to access it through, call them heist-like fashion, and essentially feel like they're really getting a substantial and large payday. I should also note that when we're talking about the XP distribution and the treasure distribution, if we did put something like the sword in the stone on level 1, we should not include that in our XP budget or our treasure cache budget, because we are never really expecting and this is the budget of a level 1 party exploring level 1, right? But I also like the idea that once the party becomes level 2, level 1 doesn't become useless. Sure, right? You're on level 2, and let's say that we continue to use that chart, by the way. 2 requires 20, 3 requires 30 XP. So that means on level 2, we want to put 50 XP on level 2. So presumably, level 2 is going to have a slightly better treasure distribution curves, right? You might have more rare items. You might have less 0 treasures. Maybe you see your first 5. But you could still get to level 3 with 30 XP by picking up stuff on level 1. There might still be some treasures that are available on level 1 that are still totally worthwhile and still totally worth getting from an experience point perspective. But we shouldn't include this, tenor in our budget because we have no real expectation. While the players may eventually come back and cheat to get it, that's going to require more substantial character powers, resources, spells, rituals, the whole jazz, rather than, just something they got lucky and dumb and did on level 1. That being said, I wouldn't hate it if you did create something, and if the players were that smart and that cool, they figured it out. Now, my players weren't level 1, but they were not level whatever. I put on level 1 of one Megadungeon. I put on level 1 of one of my Megadungeons a ring of 3 wishes. And it was probably, so this is on level 1. And given the scope and the nature of the hiddenness, level of hiddenness, the traps that guarded it, I would say that this is probably appropriate for like a level 10 to 12 party to accomplish. And I think the party accomplished this when they were like level, actually, you know what? It was a ring of 3 wishes. There was only 1 wish left. I think they accomplished this at like level 4 or something. Like they had a wish spell in a ring at as early as level 4. So, and I'm okay with that. Like, I think that's pretty cool. Like, they figured it out. They did it. They combat, they beat the challenges in a very clever way. Used their spells and abilities. Now, part of the problem with this was Pathfinder 1, and Pathfinder 1, it was really easy and cheap to make skill items. That was a mistake that I think Pathfinder 1 made. So some of these characters had like plus 40 to skills by level 4. Anyways. Just D&D. Hey, what's up? Interesting. I would have gone with 1 dungeon level given 30 rooms. There should be enough XP to level a group of 6 fighters to the next level. Well, remember, in Shadowdark, the XP isn't split by the number of people in your group, which is a very interesting decision, by the way, because it means that if you have 4 people in your party and you have 6 people in your party, you find a bag of gold, everybody gets 1 XP. So I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know why I drew that as a 7. Everybody gets 1 XP. So that means like virtually you get 4 here and virtually you get 6 here. So it's almost like to your advantage to bring more people. I don't know if they did that for simplicity's sake or to like not feel like you're being punished by anything. Hey, look at that. We had 100 bits from GM Scott. I have no idea what the fuck a bit is. But it's our first bits. He's got a first badge. I don't know what a bit is, nor do I know how that works, nor I know what it is doing. A bit is like a penny. Oh, well, thank you for the dollar. Look at that, you're a founder member on look at this. They got the first badge. Look how special that is. Cool. Thanks, GM Scott. I know nothing about Twitch. I'm sorry. I need to learn. We need some. I have a goal. See, I don't even know. Let's take a look. Twitch community stream manager. Clip that. Raid channel. Manage goals. Oh, okay. Nice. Bits. Oh, apparently I'm trying to get 1,000 bits, and I have 1,100 bits. Cool. Good deal. I see. It's fake Twitch currency, so they have greater control over tip distribution. Got it. Oh, I really dislike that. Split XP is great. Yeah. Obviously, I'm used to this. How to splitting XP. However, I kind of understand it to a certain extent because the problem is that when you have 6 people versus 4 people, like you're still, even though the 6-person party has a lot more strength, you're still probably only going to get through, 8 to 12 rooms in an evening of play. And I know that might sound like really high to a lot of people, but in old school games, especially if you're playing like Theater of the Mind, you can even do more than that. And so if you end up finding, let's just say, let's make it convenient, you end up finding like 12 XP worth of treasure. It's one thing for like this group to get 50% less than this group, even though you kind of both play the same amount of time. So it's just a lot harder. And I think generically, because the game is unbounded math, if you had 6 people and you were splitting XP, or 7 people, you should probably go to a lower level. But I don't know if Shadowdark is old school enough, right, to really include or think about that concept where individually we're much outpowered by the threats that we're facing, but as a collective whole, we have a lot of people. So I'm not sure. I did not know about Shadowdark XP. I need to read up on it, but I'm currently invested in my OSE open table campaign. Oh, that's sick. Yeah, OSE is great. I'm a big fan of OSE because I'm a big fan of BXD&D, and OSE is literally just a carbon copy of OSE. And while I do think BXD&D and OSE is amazing, Shadowdark definitely has this kind of like zeitgeist to it going on, and there's some really cool things that they do in it. I love that it's very simplistic. You level up, you roll on this table, you get a minor bonus, and then you can keep moving on. Are we designing this dungeon for a specific number of players? Great question, OED. What do you think, chat? And what does that mean? Because the answer is no, because Shadowdark does not have any concept of, balance in that, respect. It says here, in this book, more than a few words are spent explaining the typical amount of treasure or the average build of a monster, but typical and average adventuring is not the goal. These are mere calibration, so you know where to start. Use them to feel out the rudder of your game and make sure that, what makes things hard or not. If the players think they can win every fight, then they won't feel fear. They won't be careful. They won't use their whips. If all treasure is similar in value, there will be no epic trophies to pursue, no motivation. Instead, fill your world with stark dangers, stunning treasures. The most glorious victories are the hard-earned ones. But again, there's really no, hard and fast rules about what is an enemy, what's an appropriate level of play and not. I mean, the monsters do have levels, but there's no super, it's a very abstract concept of what the monster's relative abilities are, and there's not necessarily anything here, about how many, so generally speaking, we have this guideline here. Use the 1-to-1 monsters table. I'm going to paste this here. So we're all learning about Shadowdark together. Use the 1-to-1 monster table to determine what level a monster should be when there is one of that monster per character in a combat. This will result in a combat of average difficulty. You can combine these levels into different quantities of monsters. For example, a group of 4 4th-level ventures will face a combined 12 levels of monsters per average combat. And of course, because this is quote-unquote flat math, large groups of monsters can be very dangerous because of action economy. And a solo monster, even if it's much higher level, can be easily taken out because of action economy. By the way, this box here, which 5e kind of fails on, which I don't have a problem with, is one of the main reasons I think that people enjoy Pathfinder 2. Because Pathfinder 2 is expressly designed so that these two paragraphs here, these two issues are not a problem. The action economy does not become an issue in Pathfinder 2 when you fight lower level or higher level monsters. So here's our 1-to-1 monster chart. And again, this is how precise it is. When the party is average levels 1 to 3, you are going to use roughly 1 monster level per level of the party. So, when you're 4th level, There's 4 of you. You're going to fight about 12 levels of monster. But again, this is super, super, super rough because think about this. Like when you're level 1, you're fighting roughly 1 level of monster times per person. So there's 4. So 4 levels of monster. When you're level 3, there's, 3 levels of monster. So it's like, it's a very rough, and this says average difficulty, and it doesn't like explain this. It just kind of roughly estimates it. So we should probably design with an idea of how many players are going to be in this game because we can roughly estimate. Because remember, I do not believe in balance. However, I do believe in dungeon levels. And one of the reasons I say that this is true is because if you're on level 2 of the dungeon and suddenly there's a 10th level monster threat rampaging through the dungeon, I don't think that that's cool. Because now level 2 doesn't mean anything. It's simply the second level. And there is an old belief. Now, that doesn't mean that every monster on level 2 has to be level 2. But if level 2 has a bunch of level 10 monsters running around on it, then it's not a level 2, it's level 10. And part of the core conceit of my Megadungeon philosophy is that, and again, there's some people who've pushed past this in the OSR. Gary was a believer that, you had these encounters that were tied to dungeon level that were roughly tied to monster hit dice, yada, 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 which is cool, which I like. But some people push past that and say like, oh, that's the player should never expect anything. And the player should, you're on level 2 and boom, oh, there's an ancient red dragon. I don't like that. That feels capricious. It feels silly. It feels dumb. It removes the whole point that we're trying to make here with this design, which is to try to make it so that the players are making an informed choice. You're never going to be able to say, okay, on level 1, every single encounter that we fight is going to be, made for 4 PCs of 4 levels. And so it's going to be level 4 monsters. Like it'll never be that. But, we can roughly, estimate that. I like having unusually strong monsters in lower level dungeons, but they work best when they're easily avoided. How do you feel about high level monsters on lower levels that are isolated and have clear environmental tells? Yeah, I feel that those are fine. So, for example, in the Pathfinder 1 dungeon I remember on level 2, there was a large sarcophagus. There was like a room. And I remember the party entered from over here. There was a room here. And then like on this part of the room, there was like this large metal sarcophagus that was like sealed and warded. And it had a lock, but I think like you didn't have to be like masterful level to pick the lock, but like it was clearly bad stuff. And inside I think was a devourer, which was like CR9. But it was locked away. If the devourer was out and about just doing its thing, then that really wouldn't be level 2 of the dungeon. Devourer would kill or drive off everything that made the dungeon level 2. What's funny about this is that they kind of forgot about this monster. And then like years later, they were like, oh, remember that thing back on level 2? And then they went and opened it up. But at this point, like the party was like level 11 or 10 or 12. So they one-shotted it in one round. It was actually really, really funny. A great example of this is, we talked about this before, is Sunless Citadel, where, this is a first level adventure, but they have right off the entrance, they have this series of chambers that basically is like, warning, warning, you should not be going this way. But if the party does proceed to go down this, they basically kind of fight a weakened troll, which is probably roughly a CR4 or CR5. So I'm okay with that. But it should not just be, right there in the middle of the dungeon. It should either be isolated. There should be a reason why that dungeon or why that creature doesn't dominate the level. Either because of, it's bound, or it has some sort of other problem or some sort of other issue that prevents it from just kind of dominating the level. Now, that being said, we also have to keep in mind, as we sort of design this, with an eye towards maybe a future where we publish, right? We'd like to convert this potentially if I do all the work to make this, right? It doesn't seem like it makes much sense to do all this and not convert it to 5e, and potentially and or PF2. And obviously, these games are designed around 4 people. And a lot of games these days are designed around 4 people. So, should we design our game assuming that you have a party of 4 people? I don't know. All right. All righty. Oh, that's what's happening. OBS. Where you at? All right. In chat, put a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. Get your votes in there. How many people average in your party? Now, OE, I can certainly empathize with that, right? You pick, you might be like, oh, we have 6 players. By the way, this is people, not GMs. This is, but yeah, like, now Richard, I like Richard's thought here. Design for 6, and then 4 is just hard mode and extra treasure. The problem is that this is what Level 2 Janitor was talking about, is that it's because we don't split XP, it doesn't really work that way precisely. So another option that we could do is we could like try to design this thing to be very modular and flexible and say like, hey, figure out how many people are in your average party and then go from there. I don't know. I'm a little torn because the fact is, in this game, you don't get better rewards for having fewer people in your party. It's tougher because you have less people. Now, technically, the treasure does get split, different ways. I would be inclined. Now, remember, I can do whatever I want. I would be inclined to create my own XP chart for this dungeon. And while I don't think I would do something quite so draconian as literally splitting it, I think I would say something that like, if your group has less party members, then they become, they get +1 XP. If your party's of this size, you get +1 XP per treasure find or something like that. Because I think that I like the idea that if you have less people, you should probably get a little bit more experience points when you find and overcome these challenges and do these things. Absolutely, right? When we talked about the temporary buffs type idea, it can become wonky when you have a party of 3 for 6, unless everyone has to pay it, OE. Right? Like if every person who wants the buff gets it, has to pay for it, then it's less of an issue. I mean, you're talking about a % increase in effectiveness, but a % increase on everyone is the same as a % increase on, you know what I mean? Like 20% on 3 is the same as 20% on 6. I mean, old school D&D groups used to be, sometimes 10 or 12 people. You'd had maybe 6 or 8 actual player characters, and then there might be 4 to 6 or even more henchmen and hirelings and adders on. But all that treasure became XP, which got divided amongst all those people. So the larger your party was, the less you individually got. They don't have to be group buffs. They can be individual buffs. We haven't really decided. We've just talked about it. Interesting. There's a lot more 6s in here than I thought. Wow, you guys are really playing with that many people? Or is that just what you think we should design for? Because that's a lot. What games are you playing at 6 people? My God. I think Pathfinder 2 is like, sweet spot is like 3 people. But okay. We'll work off of this My group is almost always 6. Wow. You think the poll is assigning responses of... Oh, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how well this works. Well, the poll doesn't care what's in the poll doesn't care what's in the response. It only cares what's in the thing, but it only cares about the first number. Unless you're saying a bunch of people put 4. Oh, okay. You should have pressed 2 for 4 people, but I pressed 4 for 6 people. Got it. In other words, all right. All right, new poll. 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, 4 is 4, 5 is 5, 6 is 6. All right. This is what is this? User experience, user design failure 101. Okay. All right, we're getting very different results. All right, you guys vote. I will be right back. Jesus, I can't type. All right, there we go. I'll be right back. I gotta use the restroom really quick. I know I never have to do this, but I forgot to go before the stream, so my apologies. Okay. Very different. All right, so 4 to 5 is clearly going to be what we're going to go for here then. Okay. That, I think, makes a lot of difference. And let me ask you this. Again, we're getting more. This is more me asking. Honestly, I'm learning from you guys. You know, I've never thought about any design of like an adventure or a module except for my own group, right? I've never made anything for everybody else. So it's really interesting kind of getting a perspective on other people's thought process. So my general thought process is that there's really no substantial difference between 4 and 5 people. Yeah, 5 people takes a little bit longer, and yeah, no, obviously you're a little bit stronger, but I feel like I don't really notice a difference until you get to 6 people. 6 people feels noticeably more different than me, you know, like there's more people, it's slower, but I also feel like you feel noticeably more powerful. And same thing with going down to 3. When you go down to 3, it feels like you feel like you're missing some important role, or you're missing that extra person far more than, let's say, when you go to 5 to 4. So I think like 4 and 5 as sort of our touchstone point is a good idea. Okay, great, cool. So designed by poll, right? This is how they do it nowadays, right? Let's assume then that we are going to then need 30 XP of treasure. For our dungeon. And remember, our options are 1 XP. Well, technically it's 0 XP. We'll have some of those for sure, especially on level 1. 3, 5, and 10. This is going to be, like I said, our common treasures, our uncommon treasures, our rare treasures, our mythic treasures, and our legendary treasures. So obviously we don't need to. Can we do a poll for how many leshies on floor 1? Now level 1 is going to be pretty standard. So I would expect level 1 to have a distribution that's fairly, pyramidal in its distribution. Now that's not to say that, because common is going to be worth 0, but remember, common is still potentially a source of treasure. It's just not necessarily worth any XP. So there might be some silver and there might be some gold and stuff like that. So technically common is down here at the bottom. But in terms of uncommon, obviously to get to 30 XP, we can put 30. And remember, the uncommon treasure here is like a bag of gold. Right? What else did we have? Hey, Super Chat. Showing support for OSR. What are your thoughts on Megadungeons in genres other than standard D&D fantasy? Well, Valen, I think that they could be really, really cool. I think that Sci-Fi can do them fairly well. I don't think they work particularly well in like Call of Cthulhu or like mystery investigations, but I think Sci-Fi could absolutely do this, and I think it could be a lot of fun, especially if you do like derelict space hulks a la like Games Workshop style, or kind of extract it from that perspective. I mean, gigantic, archaic, ancient floating spaceships that are you dock at the airlock. That's your entrance point. You start making forays. You return to like your ship. I think there's a lot of cool possibilities there. The show Stargate Universe was kind of like a Megadungeon. If you were one of the 5 people that enjoyed Stargate Universe, like me, the movie Event Horizon was kind of like a sci-fi Megadungeon in a way. And obviously, Space Hulks from Games Workshop is very much a meta thing. So I think that they could be really, really, really cool too. You have lots of cool options. In D&D, we have magic to do divinations. In Sci-Fi, you might have scanners and you might have abilities to access different things. And in some ways, some of the ideas are a lot easier to do in Sci-Fi because we give technology a lot more of a pass than we do magic. Junderlin, okay, yeah, like difficulty modes. I think that's not a bad idea. I mean, this is more about implementation, but I don't mind the idea of a difficulty mode. Oh yeah, Mothership. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely all about Sci-Fi dungeon crawls. It is true. Treasure in Sci-Fi isn't as cool for some reason. It is true because like finding cash and creds isn't really as cool of a thing in Sci-Fi. I don't know why it isn't. It's cool as like the goal of a heist or a score. But generally speaking, you are correct. Treasure doesn't really translate as well into Sci-Fi. And I do tend to agree with you on that. But remember, in this game, we get experience points for secrets, blessings, magic items, trophies. So, we can kind of become it more... make it more about the gear or maybe data or, figuring out, finding DNA sequences or something like that. So I do wish you luck. And also I'm sorry to hear about you losing your job, buddy. Welcome to the Job Losers Club. And I should also note that I really like this idea. This is something else that we kind of need to kind of think about. We're just thinking about this in terms of overall treasure experience points, but we'll talk about distribution here in a minute. I know it's almost 9 o'clock, but I do kind of want to think through this with you all because it is being very yielding good results. Now, again, remember we talked about legendary 10 XP. Like we might put one of these on level 1, but this doesn't count because it's like, outside the box. Now, I'm a crazy person, but I like the idea of there being at least one mythic treasure on level 1. It could be a bunch of cash. But more than likely, it is probably going to be some sort of really cool magical item or some sort of really cool, gold or oath or blessing or secret or something of that nature. You could make it gold, and there's something to be said about that because, gold is very distributable, right? You can easily split it and share it amongst the parties. When the party gets, when you find a really, really cool magical item, it's hard to split that 6-way, So that is one of the dangers that we have of this. But remember, everybody else is at least getting experience points. But we could talk about this in a little bit here. But so that means our budget is down to 25. And maybe we do like 4 3s. So now our budget is down to 13. And we do 13 uncommons, right? And maybe we have something like, roughly like 21. That might be too much. Because remember, we have 30 chambers. 30 to 35, actually. So assuming that we then have 18 treasure XP. Remember, treasure doesn't have to literally be treasure. It could be a magic item. It could be an oath, a secret, a blessing. And that's in, 30 to 35 rooms. That means that roughly, approximately, right, you're getting 0.5 XP per room on average. Now, of course, it will be, condensified and densified. A group could technically find the 3 rare treasures. That'd be 12 XP, and they would be level 2 after only finding 3 treasures. I'm totally okay with that. But this means that when we start thinking about how we're going to structure this, we should be thinking about this. Now, though, there's going to be some number of common treasures, but this, again, remember, common treasure is not worth any experience points, and thus you can kind of throw it in for free. Common treasures include things like, they call it poor, but I'm using my own language here. Mundane, low value, unexciting. Things like a bag of silver, some dice, used dagger, right? There's so many. I'm not saying that this is wrong or right. Well, I guess we could talk about this here too. For those of you who don't watch our Torchbearer game, there is this idea in Torchbearer that you have a very limited number of inventory slots. And sometimes you will find treasure, which is worth a lot of money, but it requires a lot of inventory space. So then there's sort of this idea of a challenge of how do we get this treasure out? If you look at the old treasure tables of D&D, there is often many, many, many thousands or tens of thousands of copper and silver. And the reason is that it exists is because it's supposed to make it so that the party wants this copper because it's worth treasure, it's worth experience points, but it's difficult to carry it because of its weight or its encumbrance. And that is a component of the play of this type of game. Now, in Shadowdark, there is somewhere in the game, Kelsey, where'd you put it? How much you can carry. All right. Well, it's not in the character creation section, and it's not in the magic, and it's not in the wands. It's not in the gameplay. So I wonder where it is. It's not in combat. It's not in downtime. It's not in the example of play. It's not in the monsters section. Huh. I actually do not know where it is. If somebody knows where it is. Okay. Page 34, apparently. How did I miss it? Oh, okay. I guess I just shuddered past it. Okay. No, I know it's based off of your strength, which is fine. But so coin is each gear slot. Remember, your gear slot is 10 plus your strength modifier. So, you know, a typical character with basically essentially no strength is going to be able to carry 10 gear slots. And 10. But 100 coins is 1 gear slot. 200 coins, I'm sorry, 100 coins is 0. Okay, apparently it's the first one's free, which is kind of awkward. I would probably make it, I don't know how to interpret this exactly, but I would probably say like 99 is 0, and like each full value of 100, you know, divide the number of coins you have by 100, and that's how many gear slots it is. So anyways, there's this idea that we want to like use copper coins to like make it difficult to extract treasure. I'm not like a huge, like, I don't know how important that is to Shadowdark, but I will say that I mean, I definitely think it's something that we shouldn't completely ignore when we're talking about our damage or talking about our gear here. But anyways, so based off of our idea before, we've got 30 XP, because again, you need 10 and then 20. It's going to be divided into 13 common treasures, which are worth 1 XP each, 3 rare treasures worth 3 XP each, and 1 mythic treasure worth 5 XP each. So 13 plus 13 plus 5 isn't it? Wait, or did we miss something? Can I not do math? Did I misadd? 12, 17. Oh, 4 rares. That's where I got messed up. Okay. So, what site am I using to blackboard this? This is Excalidraw. Now, the question is, how do we divide these 18 rewards up? Because we can do treasure, I should say, we can do coin, and we can do gems, and we can do what we'll call art. And this kind of all gets sort of lumped under the idea of money. I don't know why I put that there. Money. Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. So I don't have to worry about that. That's nice. Okay. So this is just our money. But we also have magic items. But, you know, kind of, I don't want to say unique to Shadowdark, but, you know, included in this idea is also awarding experience points for things like secrets, oaths, and blessings. And I've talked before about how I used in previous dungeons this idea of lore as a way of encouraging people to, you know, read and learn about the dungeon and learn about the history, not just as a means to sort of advance their acquiring further coin, gems, art, and magic items, but as a means unto themselves. Like make people curious about the dungeon and reward them for doing that. And there's also this idea of, what they call blessings. I'm not really entirely sure what oaths means, but to me, when I see blessings, I think of fountains. Now, I use the term fountains, but anyone who's watched this channel for a long time knows that I can mean a lot of different things. But what I mean by fountains is I mean places within the dungeon where you find something that grants your character maybe random-esque magical powers, that you can use to gain abilities that you wouldn't otherwise be able to gain. I find those to be very, 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 very fun, and I would love to continue to explore those. So then the question is, how many of each of these are we going to put? Because we only have 18 choices. And you can start to see how, like, okay, so that, the dungeon, we're running out of things really quick. Maybe we need to have more than this. Absolutely, not so sane. That's what this lore is. That's what I mean by lore, is to have a defined, you could think of it as a mystery that you maybe have in level 1. And when the players have sort of figured out, oh, that's what happened to Duke so-and-so, he became the first vampire, or it could be a spoiler for deeper levels. But when the players put, lore shouldn't be something that necessarily, like, the players just find a passage, read it, and then they gain the experience points. I mean, you could do that, but I like that it's the idea that the players find clue A, clue B, and maybe they could figure it out by then, but then they find clue C, and the players kind of can connect the dots and say, oh, I get it. This is something I learned. It could even be something like, for example, in one of my early dungeons, in Dragon's Delve, there were these doors made out of a mysterious blue steel, and they were ancient. But each blue steel door was very, very difficult to get through until you're very high levels. They didn't have locks, hinges. They were magical doors, and each one opened to a password. And gaining access to these doors, it was really crucial to being able to move through the dungeon quickly and unimpeded. And so I gave experience points every time the PCs learned the password to a new secret door. So the same way that we have this breakdown of treasure, for example, we talk about, Kelsey talks about in her book that, like, a bag of gold, silver might be 0, a bag of gold might be 1, fabulous might be 3, legendary might be 10. We could create a table of our own that says that, and this could be true for the entire dungeon, like discovering a secret door, or a secret chamber or whatever, right? That's like an uncommon reward, and you get 1 experience point for that. Or whereas, like, going into a new room is a common or a poor treasure. It's worth 0 XP. So you don't get experience points for just mapping every room in the dungeon. But if you do discover a secret chamber or a secret door or a secret entrance, you can make that worth experience points to encourage players to engage with the dungeon on that level. So that's not really lore, and that's not really coins or gems or art or magic items or lore or blessings. It's more of kind of an exploration bonus as well. And when I ran Dragon's Delve for Pathfinder 1, the way Pathfinder 1 traditionally worked is the fast XP. Pathfinder 1 gave you 3 tracks of experience. Fast, slow, and average. And, like, as an example, the fast experience points to get to level 2 was 1,000, the average was 2,000, the slow was 3. We used the slow track, but you got XP for killing monsters, for treasure, and for exploring. So there was actually an exploration bonus of experience points that you got. And so if your characters were doing all 3 of these, you got almost more experience points than you would have gotten otherwise at fast, because you could get experience points for killing the monsters, then looting them, and you found a new room that they were located in. So you got, you needed 3 times as much experience points, but you potentially could get more than 3 times as much experience. So it worked out. And also there was a escalating bonus XP that you got the longer you stayed in the dungeon, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, so before we lay out our dungeon, because fundamentally we're talking about a progression-based thing here. The whole point of level 1 of our dungeon is to, from the player's point of view, is to acquire this experience points from our dungeon. They are interfacing with our dungeon in order to acquire these treasures, which again could be coin, gems, art, magic items, lore, blessings, could be exploration. That is why they are here. Now, there might be story reasons for this, and we can obviously have fun with that. But no, I didn't like really break it down that much. I mean, I think it was probably more like 30% for killing, 50% for treasure, 20% for exploration. That's probably what it was, probably. Give or take. You got most of it for treasure. So how we distribute these treasures in how we distribute these treasures is going to be really important to driving how our players look for treasure and look for exploring the dungeon. Sorry, my dog was barking. I was like, is Zeus okay? Okay. Yeah, he's very stressed. Okay. So one of the things that we can do also, I know you're like, Derek, why don't you ever just do things? Because I want to explain it, and I also want you to understand why it takes me so long to do stuff. We can also give each level or sub-level, remember there's multiple ideas of levels. We can give each level different feeling or different touch. Sorry, there's lots of dogs barking, and it's very distracting to me. By the way, if you live anywhere within 5 hours of Cleveland, Ohio, and you're willing to provide some references and take a drive, we have 2 dogs available that we are fostering. And we started fostering these dogs before I lost my job. And we started fostering these dogs before my father died. So if you are interested in adopting Kaz or Ro, leave me a comment or shoot me a DM because they're for free. We took them in and nobody wants them. They don't have to be together. I mean, it'd be cool if they were together, but they do not need to be together, if I understand that. But yes, yes, Kaz. Well, his name is Chaos. Well, the guy, the idiot who like kind of called him Chaos. Again, these dogs were abandoned. There was a bad situation. It was a friend of a friend's loser sister. And basically the dogs got abandoned. No, his name was the guy who ended up in the drug abuser who technically owned the pit mix, named him Chaos. And so, but they kind of just called him like Chaos, Kaz. So we just kind of just officially called him Kaz. Anyways, and the puppy is Ro. And she's like 6 months old or something like that. But they're buddies, but they can be adopted separately. But anyways, if you're within 5 hours, we're getting kind of desperate because I don't really know people. I don't have friends, like aside from like Bob and all that stuff. And Bob is afraid of dogs. It doesn't like dogs. And everybody else is like also out of work. So it's just a tough spot to be in. But if you are interested and you're in the Cleveland area, Cleveland, Ohio area, let me know. Anyways, back to Shadowdeep. So one thing that we can also do in order to give each level a unique feel and to entice players. Now, this is level 1. So I think level 1 should be our baseline. So I'm just throwing that out there. But imagine if we were doing this same distribution at a higher level or a different level. Maybe this level in our dungeon, maybe, and it's a great thing to sort of hint at the players, right? Like, what if level 3B, right, is known as, the magical reliquarium, and it was or like the arcane laboratorium, and it's like a place where great experiments in magic and creation were being done, and there's a theme there of magical constructs, a lot of golem creatures and other strange weird beasts, not the undead that maybe you saw on another level, or not this, but level 3B maybe doesn't its distribution of treasure is very skewed towards magic items, maybe magic items and lore and blessings. Maybe there's not much cash on level 3B. It's mostly magic items, lores, and blessings. Whereas another level might be missing magic items and lore and blessings, and it's all money. Or another one, maybe there's a level that it doesn't really have any tangible treasures. It's all just information and lore and treasure and putting things together. It's almost like a mystery level where there's a lot of information, a lot of clues to put together, a lot like a library level. Maybe a library level contains a lot of lore and magical items, but only like scrolls or books, right? That kind of thing. You can really theme your dungeon levels around the treasure. And this could be really fun and cool for your players, especially in an old school game, because when, the wizard hears about level 6, the library, they go, I want to go to level 6. They need to learn about level 6 when they're up on level 4 or level 2, because now they go, oh, that'd be so cool. Like, can you imagine how many cool spells there are there? Can you imagine how many cool maybe scrolls there are there that I can add to my book? Maybe there's a bunch of lore puzzles that I'm trying to put together. And I should also note about the lore, you can have lore that stretches over multiple levels of the dungeon so that it can potentially take several different clues spread throughout the dungeon in order to kind of solve the riddle, if you will. And maybe level 6 has a lot of clues and a lot of answers to people's questions. So anyways, level 1, I think we should be fairly generic. And obviously, 2, being higher level, we probably don't have as much magic items, lore, and blessings. So now in terms of money, I'm not really concerned about breaking these down. It's more of just breaking this stuff down here. So let us decide how many uncommon, that's 1 XP, rare, that's 3 XP, and mythic, that's 5 XP, that we have on level 1. All right, let me just throw out. So we got 13, 4, and 1. I just on a basis, my initial, and by the way, I'm just treating this all as one category. I don't really particularly care if it's coin or gem or art. This really just enters how how heavy it is to carry. My initial thought here is going to be something like this. 1, let me increase my stroke width here. 1, 6. So we have 7 more. 1, 6 more, 4, 2, 2, 1, 1. Is that right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay. So this is how my just initial take of how I would break down the treasure, and we can ignore this one, on level 1. So we would have 6 uncommon monetary treasures, 1 rare monetary treasure, and we would make the mythic treasure of level 1 coin. Could be, again, I could be persuaded that this should maybe be a magic item. The problem is, like I said, you can't split a magic item, which is, maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. But I also wouldn't be opposed to having this mythic item be a magic item, or potentially even a blessing or a fountain. So let us see what you all think. All right. What should the mythic treasure of level 1 be? Should it be money, coin, gem, etc., magic item, lore, or reset poll? Poll is up. Nope. Resetting poll. End the poll. I put commas, and it's a comma separated values. All right. Resetting the poll. Okay. Poll is up. All right. Now I presumed that the mythic treasure should be coin, but it could totally be a huge cumbersome jade statue that takes up 5 slots. For example, if you watch our Torchbearer game, that is exactly what we did. Now, when I say magical blessing, what I mean is it's something that, like, it's a weird magical blessing that, maybe it, permanently raises one of your ability scores randomly by +2. And it's just random. You just roll D6, you increase your ability score by +2, right? Like, that would be like, and it's like, obviously, if it's mythical, it's worth 5 experience points. We should probably put it in a place where the players feel like they had to earn it. But a magical blessing is sort of like a way for characters to gain magical powers or magical weird abilities. Because remember, in old school games, at least this is my philosophy, characters don't really get anything from their leveling up. What they get from leveling up is numbers. And numbers are very boring. So in modern games, they have given us things like feats and powers. 4th edition gave us powers. 3rd edition gave us feats. 5th edition has feats. Pathfinder 2 has tons of feats. And that's so that we have something to look forward to when we level up. And so now your enjoyment of the game is tied directly to leveling up, because that's how you get new stuff. Magic items and cool, weird, wonky abilities are the ways that you used to gain these abilities, because in the character class itself didn't really get anything. You just got more hit points, maybe a little bit better of an attack roll, maybe a little bit better saving throws, which is great because that made you tougher, and that meant that you could go down to those scarier places, those deeper levels, fight those tougher monsters that are guarding those cooler treasures, those weirder fountains that then you can then use in order to, gain access to cool new abilities and cool new powers. Now, I'm seeing that magical items is so money and coins is apparently right out. That is not a choice. People are very uninterested in that. Now, Shadram brings a point. Big power magic item level 1 makes one player too much stronger than others, I think. Shadram, you are absolutely correct. However, that is exactly the type of thing that in an old school game, I am both, 1, not worried about, and 2, totally okay with. Assuming that treasure equals XP, I think this treasure just being more XP is a bit unexciting. Yes, treasure is also money, though. right? When you say treasure, they're all treasure. Wait. I'm confused. All of these things are treasure. So I don't understand, Ilya, what you meant by that. So Shadram. Okay. Yeah, that is not how they refer to it in the game. That's why I was confused. Yes, but you can also use coins and gems to buy stuff in town, and you can, like maybe you really want armor and you can't afford it. And if you find the mythic treasure, everybody could buy plate armor, or whatever that wants to afford it or something like that. So, I mean, it could be like a really fun way to like, pimp your party out in town. To say nothing of the fact that also remember, as a secondary side analog, my game is going to include these ideas of tributary shrines where players can spend their money in order to gain buffs, which last for a time-limited amount based on how much you spent. So treasure in the form of coins and gems is also going to be a way that your characters can access those buffs on sort of a pay for that. XP, that's true. Lore is just XP. There is no cash. Yes. Now the advantage, Stan, is that lore in theory does one or two things. One, it has its own reward. Like as a player, you might just enjoy solving the mystery, right? That's worth something to you because you just enjoy solving it. But two, that information could be extremely valuable because if you learn, for example, Stan Not So Saint, that the mythical Draco Lich down on level 8 can be instantly killed with an obsidian blade, that information could be more than any amount of gold, right? So that's where the lore information is, can be very powerful. But money is cool because money is very democratic, right? Money is full of player agency. The players can really decide whatever they want to do with the money. They could carouse. They could convert the money into even more experience points if they want to, at the risk of drawing the ire of the carousing tables. They could also use it to equip their characters, get henchmen, hirelings. They could use it to engage with the tributary systems, or potentially engage. We haven't talked about this yet. It's not in Shadowdark. Actually, we're kind of tied all over the place here with this bullet. How are we even doing on this stream here? 74. Hello, everybody. This is my time to shill real quick since we're all here. If you want to support this channel and you have not been able to financially do so, that is totally understandable. However, if you would be so willing and so gracious, we have affiliate status over at twitch.tv/knights-of-the-last-call. It's our Twitch account. If you have Amazon Prime, you can use your Amazon Prime account with your Twitch account to grant us free Prime sub. It doesn't cost you any money. You're already paying for it as part of your Prime sub. But if you head over there, check it out. You can, if you want to support us, I would love it. It would mean a lot to me. It would really go a long way towards supporting this channel. And it doesn't cost you any money, which I really like. Because if you're spending any money on this channel, I really encourage you to go to the Patreon, because that'll get you into our Discord. It'll get you into all of our cool, unique Patreon features. But if this is free for you and you want to support this channel and haven't been able to do so, understand. I'm out of a job myself. So I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. So thank you, everybody. So it seems like we're pretty tied here. Everybody doesn't feel like it would be money, but we might redo this poll because I do want to recontextualize it. And I want to ask this group, because you're an awesome group, another important question. Okay. Which is, let me change this here. Do you enjoy? Now I'm really All right, here we go. This is the new poll. All right. Do you enjoy the idea of town building, as in the PCs who are headquartered in a nearby town to the Megadungeon build it up with their coin and treasure? So the reason I ask this is because it doesn't really make any amount of sense, right? Like, why are the PCs the ones using all this money and putting it in the town? But if the really, okay, so we're off to a very strong start here, much more than I expected. Really interesting. Wow, I am blown away here. All right, well, level 2 janitor, that wasn't a very big surprise from you. Interesting. Okay, there we go. Dr. Stevel, there we go. Not that I don't, have a particular premise of this. You love it, but my players tend to bounce off of it. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people bounce off of it. Yeah, Strat, and I couldn't agree with you more, Strat. I love the idea of town building, but mechanical implementation, I have yet to see one that is really good. I'm doing that in my PF2 sandbox, and the players are super into it. Interesting. I think it adds a whole lot in terms of a gold sink. So I will say this: we did it. It became kind of the core element of our Forbidden Lands game, and in fact, a lot of the adventures came because the players were trying to gather resources in order to build up their town or their stronghold. But a part of the thing is I liked the idea that it wasn't just like building up the town for lulz. In Forbidden Lands, we turned it into a way that the players could regain willpower at a faster rate, and that felt like it was a really, really powerful thing. Well, Stan, it also gives us a unique element to fuck with the players, because a loss in the dungeon maybe doesn't necessarily have to be like the party gets TPK'd. Maybe it's that the town gets damaged or the town gets destroyed. And Derek, you like it more for a West Marches, honestly. Well, the thing is a Megadungeon is kind of a West Marches. It's a vast, unexplored area that parties, potentially multiple parties of different players, can go into time and time and time again. But yeah, you could attract local blacksmith or alchemist, extract low-level way to craft scrolls for you. Like maybe at the start of the game, you can't buy scrolls, but then you invest in that and now you can. So it gives the players, because I think there's something that I think is really important in a lot of these games. And it's the idea of the group. It's the idea of the group entity. And this is something I think that people miss with old school games, which I think Torchbearer does a really good job of. But even still, I think it could do a better job. Is you are just a part of the whole, right? You are just a part of the group. And as long as the group goes on, your contributions will not have been in vain, even if your character dies. So your character's contributions may have helped, get the town to this really cool level. And then when your character maybe dies, which is a possibility in these more lethal old school systems, that you can at least go, okay, you're not like, oh, I have nothing. You're like, no, I helped build up the town. I helped contribute to that. And in that way, the town, the party, kind of becomes this entity that lives on. It becomes your legacy. And so when you make a new character, you sort of come off of that sort of, prescription there. I see a bunch of stuff here coming in here. Some really good comments. I want to make sure I get to it all. But Dr. Stevel says, doesn't fit with my feels of Shadowdark. Okay. Maybe Shadowdark has a different feel to you than it does to me. I mean, for me, it's like an old school D&D game. And I think there's definitely an element there of, now to be fair, when I think about building up the town, I'm thinking about building up the town, like, not like it's all like gumdrops and sugar rainbows. It's still an, kind of a grim place in its own way. But Elia says, I was just about to say the same thing, Derek. Building up a stronghold was something my Forbidden players were super interested in. Yeah, again, most of our campaign ended up revolving around them. In an early session, they randomly befriended this ferryman and his family, and they just had a small, house at the intersection of 3 rivers in Yendra, Western Yendra. And the group kept going back there and kind of became their default kind of place to stop over, and they really helped the ferryman out, and they gave him like a bunch of money and an axe and all this other stuff. And then they eventually kind of took it over. They kind of co-opted it. And then the sons of the ferryman were kidnapped and taken away, presumably into slavery or to be converted by Rust Brothers. And the group was like, fuck that. They tracked the Rust Brothers down, rescued the two sons, and the Rust Brother leader swore revenge that he would return and he would burn that whole family out, root and stem. And so the group returned, and at that point, the ferryman and his family were just like, we are indebted to you for life. You saved our kids. And the group was like, oh, don't be too happy at us yet. We also kind of brought the wrath of the Rust Brothers down on you, and they're probably going to return, rebuild their strength, gather like a war party, and come back to kind of kill you all, wipe you all out. And so at that point, the group felt like, damn, well, we need to make a stand here. We're not going to just let these people die for us. And so that's why they decided to start fortifying the ferry town, the ferryman's house, which ended up becoming this little mini town, which ended up becoming their stronghold. And that's why then, even though the name of their stronghold was called Halvard's Ferry, and none of the PCs were Halvard. Halvard was the name of the ferryman, but it became the little town that they built up, and the little palisade wall became known as Halvard's Ferry. Anyways, that's the story. It's the story of our Forbidden Lands campaign. And in true old school Renaissance fashion, the entire campaign was building up over the course of the spring into the summer until the Rust Brothers returned with, 40 men, 50 men to just, wipe them out. And the Rust Brothers did return. And by the time they returned, instead of returning to a small ferry house on the banks of the Yendra River, they returned to a fortified encampment with wooden walls, a guard tower, trained longbowmen, a gate, a moat that had been dug around the palisade wall, and an allied griffin, which had befriended the druid because the druid found him a mate in the dwarven lands. And they were like, we used their mass combat system, and I was like, okay, well, their bonus is +2, and your guys' bonus is +7. So I'm going to roll D6 +2, and you're going to roll D6 +7. And, depending on who rolls higher, depends on which side takes losses. And yeah, we literally resolved the entire mass combat in like 2 rolls. It was like a one-sided absolute slaughter. Anyways. Boothby. What my group is kind of digging, I'm allowing them to spend money building up the town that will grant future character perks, such as archetype unlocks or bonuses, etc. I like that idea. I like part of the thing that we could do with the town in a Megadungeon is this idea of like, when you die, maybe this gives you new perks when you make your next character. Like, imagine if like the original game is like roll 3d6 straight, but then like as you build up certain parts of the character, like future characters get a little bit of an experience, they get a little bit of a bonus to their attribute rolls because they're coming from a better stock. They're coming from the Megadungeon. I don't know. I think it's a lot of fun. My players like doing it. I don't have any mechanics for it, but I pretend like money is real and it's not just a number on paper. They're bringing in wheelbarrows full of gold coins. The area will become rich and prices will skyrocket. Or that's the realistic thing that should happen. Exactly. But I do think, the town should matter somehow. And all of you seem to agree full-heartedly. Junderlin says, could go more rogue-like with the mechanics. The more you upgrade the town, the more the players starting levels. Yeah, right. It could be more roguelike. Because in my version of the truth, when you die, you start back at level 1. That's my version. They are very simple, but they are so let me put it this way. It's a good amount of juice strat. It's not a ton of juice, but the juice to squeeze ratio is very high. How about that? I just described the roguelike genre. Okay, fair enough. This is very rogue legacy. All right. That just encourages players to get their characters killed. Well, remember, you do start back at 0 experience points, and you start back at level 1. I mean, even if the party got their town up, I doubt that they would start at the same level as their old characters. And you wouldn't get any of those cool bonuses or blessings that you got. So, I think that is something to be said. It's more of like you just don't feel quite as bad. I remember Smith had a campaign that was called... what was the real name of it? We called it Death World, but its real name was Demon Fire. And Smith was like, this is a PF1 campaign. This is my Tomb of Horrors. I'm throwing down the gauntlet. You guys have to, I'm going to be pulling out all the stops. And as a result of this, your guys' characters are Gestalt. So we basically could be 2 characters at once, or 2 characters levels at once. But he was, it was procedurally generated. So he's like, so my bias is an input into the game. We got to use the advanced race guide to build custom races. We got to use, anyways, very broken characters. But the thing was, every time a character died, Smith would take the character, he would write how it died on it, like in a black Sharpie, and he would tape it to the wall behind him. Kind of as like a collage behind Smith. And when you made your new character, it was a point buy system, I think. But you got 1 more point in your point buy pool for each character that was on the wall. Now, my character never died until the very end of the campaign, when I did die and then ended the campaign. But like we had another player who literally never survived more than 1 session, or he never survived 2 sessions in a row. And I think by the end of the campaign, there was like 36, or I don't even remember. There was like over 20 characters on the wall behind Smith. And so you were using like a 30-point buy, but they were doing a 50-point buy to trying to make these characters strong enough to overcome it. So it was a very Smith moment. But you had these characters that just at the end of the game, it's like 18, 18, 18, 18, 16, 18, it was just crazy. Yes. I actually missed a couple sessions. I missed 1 session where everybody TPK'd. So, that is to be said. But if you're interested, and I know you're not, but you probably are. Time to flex here a little bit. Now, I'm not going to go super into details of it, but let me tell you, you know what's funny? I don't actually even really remember the name of my character, but my character was so I was a custom race, and my custom race basically had like -6 to strength, like -6 to dex, but had like a huge bonus to like wisdom, like int, and like charisma. And the theme of my race, there was a story element of this, is we were like sort of the equivalent of like a genetically engineered race, but like magically genetically engineered, that was designed to wage war against Orcus and the forces of the Demon Forge, and undergo this process, because I was, combining my ideas into this game. So anyways, so that was like the idea. And now you're like, okay, so what were you? So I was a Gestalt. That meant you were dual classed. So I had 2 classes. I was a Paladin, Summoner, but I was a type of Summoner. There was an archetype from the Summoner called the Synthesist Summoner. And what the Synthesis Summoner did is the Synthesis Summoner basically summoned their summon. It was like kind of like a vague ectoplasmic, magic plasmic outline. Okay. That was like a mech, and you rode around inside of it. And as a result of this, you used your summons physical stats, whereas you used your mental stats. So even though my character's strength was like 4 and my like dex was like 5, my summons had like a really high strength and a really high dex. But then my paladin had insane wisdom, int, and charisma. And then of course, because I was a paladin, I got to add plus, my charisma was like 24. So I got to add, I got to add all this to my, saving throws. And of course, remember, Pathfinder 1 had the most broken version of Smite Evil ever. It was essentially a buff that lasted until the character died. You got your charisma bonus to AC. You got your charisma bonus to attack. And you also got your level to damage but it was doubled if the creature was undead, dragon, or outsider evil. Anyways, so that was my character. And then the other thing was, because of the way that the summoner rules worked, I used, and of course I had really high charisma, so my DCs were really high, but I used all of these really broken line of spells that they had called the lesser, they were called the evolution line. There was like a lesser evolution, a minor evolution, greater evolution, major evolution. And they granted your Eidolon certain abilities, whatever you needed it. You could give it water breathing. You could give it immunity to fire. You could give it whatever. But because I was a synthesis summoner, I got those immunities too. So I could basically just program, I could just dial in whatever my character needed in order to be broken in this fight. And then, rinse, repeat over and over and over again. So that was my character. And that's why I never died. And of course, you can see here, Strat says, yes, the most broken summoner subclass. And then, of course, synthesis summoner was the best. A paladin with a +6 charisma score. I see what we're going for here. Oh God, synthesis summoner was OP. I understand now why you didn't die. Correct. Listen, what's the meme? I'm the only person who took the test seriously. Smith said, I'm going to be throwing down the gauntlet. I'm going to be bringing the worst of the worst. And, can you dig it? Now you might say, Derek, what possibly killed your character? Well, eventually, I think we were level 9, 8, something in that level. And we were in the Demon Fire dungeon, and I encountered a boss. Now, all of Smith's monsters were created procedurally. He had written all this code. Platinus, no. This boss had a maze aura. So once you got within range of it, it mazed you until you escaped the maze, and then you would instantly get remazed. And there's no saving throw for maze. So my character essentially became eternally trapped in this boss's maze aura forever. There was just no way for me to get out. Now, in some ways you could argue that this was kind of a more of a puzzle monster. Now, granted, Smith didn't create this monster. Smith created the procedural elements that created this monster. There was a random table that gave this something a maze ability, and then there was another random ability that gave it as an aura ability, and it just spit out this horrifying beast. Now, you might say, so did the rest of the party rescue you? No. And the reason why the rest of the party didn't rescue us is because they had already they had all died, because there was a large room, I think it was underwater or underwater-ish. And we were higher level, and this room, so Smith's math generated a room that had something like 40 tritons, right? Which is like a CR 1/2 mermaid, right? Or merfolk person, right? But because we were higher level, it also gave them all the ability to cast at will, not Cone of Cold, Ice Storm. So if you're not familiar with Ice Storm is a ranged AoE that doesn't do that much damage. It does like 5d6 damage, cold damage or something like that. But there's no save. So, the 40 Tritons cast 200, d6 worth of unsavable Ice Storm damage on my entire party. I was able to give myself immunity to cold before they killed me. But everybody else died, and then I got stuck in the boss's maze aura, and that was the end of the campaign. In the sense of I was like, it was almost like we could have kept playing, right? We all could have made new characters and new characters and new characters. I do remember that the final, we had it was through natural evolution, right? The first sets of characters were all like, oh, we're gonna make fun stuff. And then everyone's like, okay, this, and then this, and then this. And so the last characters that were made were almost all duplicates of each other, because we had just distilled the game down into and remember, you got bonuses to your character buy based on how many characters. So there were characters being made at the end of the game that had like charisma 30 starting characters, and they were paladins. And I want to say that they weren't Oracle. They were gunslingers. because there was a gunslinger archetype that could do something else with its charisma. And I don't remember. It's either gunslinger or oracle. I can't remember which one it was, but it wasn't the core class. It was an archetype. And it was, I don't remember exactly which one it was. Maybe somebody in chat does, but there was an archetype or something of oracle or gunslinger, one of those two, that let you do something else with your charisma. And so when you combine that with the paladin, you basically had like infinite AC, infinite saving throws. You were about as powerful as you could possibly make your character. And that was how Demon Fire came and went. Let's see here. Do I have? Let me see if I can find something. Pull something up. Here we go. Oh, looks like the Obsidian portal is down. Oh, here we go. Yes, there we go. There we go. Oh, that's funny. Demon Fire. Of course, using the Diablo font, right? Good stuff. Good stuff. Although, anyways, there's a lot of funny stories about this. Let's see here. PF1, how I miss you, and I never want to play you again. Well said. Let's see here. Strat says, this is a terrifying sentence, God. That sounds like it was an amazing campaign. Yeah, well, to a certain extent. Yes, our characters were called Oathbound. Should have brought plane shift to survive the maze. Or can you plane shift in a maze? I mean, it's possible. I don't know that I had that. I mean, that again, mistakes were made, Strat. I was prepared for almost any eventuality. I was not prepared for the unlimited maze aura boss monster. And, mistakes were made and kills were counted. Okay, so you guys really like the idea of base building. So, moving back, I'm going to redo our poll one more time. I was going on about our campaign here. I'm going to do the poll again for the treasure. And the reason why I'm asking you all is because, in theory, like you're the type of people who be playing this game. What should the mythic treasure be? Money, magic item, lore, or blessing? All right. Poll time. Assuming that we've included a town building element. What's up, Alex? You still employed, buddy? Is anybody still employed? I haven't heard from you. Almost. Fair enough. That's a good answer. Yes, I officially today, as of May, I no longer have health insurance. Thank you, VK, for Babel Street, for keeping me on for about a month. I'm in the process of getting a new one. It's very expensive. I don't recommend it. I'm not even kidding you. There was one option. The premium was like $300. And of course, also, I'm trying to find a health plan that at least includes my doctors. Ideally, I don't want to change my dentist, my optometrist, my my primary care physician. But I found a plan that was like, the premium was like $390 a month, which I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of good, I guess. And then it was like it was like a $9,000 a year deductible. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is just never going to come in. This is just never going to kick in. Anyways, good times. But Alex, I'm trying to make it happen. That's right. Exactly, Alex. I'm trying to a lot more time. I've been streaming a ton, and these people have hopefully been enjoying it. I hope. Alex is obviously a former coworker of mine and an all-around good guy. All right. Magic item and blessing. All right. So money is still not the most popular. Now, I agree. Now, you know what, actually, though? I will say this. There is something that I would do. There is something I would do in, say, Shadowdark that I would not do in Pathfinder 2. I would probably do it in D&D 5th edition, if I'm being honest, is I would totally drop like a +2, and again, ideally magic items of this caliber would, be given, a cool name or something like that. Something like, I always love to call a trident, right? Because it's trident of fish command. Something like, there we go. Cinder Tide. +2 flaming burst. I'm putting on my PF2 hat or my PF1 hat here. +2 flaming burst trident. Troll bane. Just some crazy weird item, right? That it's like way too powerful for a level 1 party. I have absolutely no problem giving this, to a party, Oh, you know what? +2 flaming burst trident, not troll bane. What are we doing here? Crab bane. There we go. Oh, it is Cinder Tide. Woe befall the enemies. Woe before the enemies of the Shell Father. It cooks them from within. Hold on a sec. Note. If you kill crab like monster, you regain 1d6 HP per hit die of foe. There we go. And it absolutely, now, of course, it would look really cool, Dr. Stevel, but of course, it would actually be a gigantic lobster fork. Absolutely. All right, hold on a sec. ChatGPT, give me something here. Create image of Cinder Tide, which is a magical flaming trident, but designed to kill crab-like creatures and actually is a giant crab lobster fork. There we go. Ooh, yeah, you could gain immunity to Chul Paradise. So, okay. And I know we're going off on a tangent here, but the reason why we're going off on this tangent is because it's important to set the tone. If the group, and obviously we're joking around with like the crab bane, okay? But let's actually do this. Let's make this a little bit more, less silly. Instead of and by the way, I apologize if you don't know 3rd edition nomenclature, but basically this is just a powerful thing here. But if we made it Flame and Burst, and instead of making it Crab Bane, we made it, like aquatic Bane, right? So any creature with the aquatic tag would you do bonus damage to that. So what this means then is that the players now have this item. And now certain levels of the dungeon become more appealing to them to go to rather than another level of the dungeon. Or maybe they'll go to, let's say we've kind of thrown around the idea that level 4 of the dungeon is the underwater level, the underwater floor. Presumably there's a lot of aquatic creatures there. Maybe this group goes, we have Cindertide. Let's go, let's go take that thing out. Oh, AI, sometimes you try and fail. I confused it by asking for a trident that was like a lobster fork. I do like that the trident looks like a lobster, though. That's actually kind of sick. Anyways, but I like that the magic item is just not like, I mean, again, not like to shit on anything, but like, a +2 striking rune is like so boring. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't inspire the party. It doesn't change what they want to do. When you can just customize and change around your weapons and your things to do whatever you want them to do, it's really boring. And striking and runes are very unexciting because what are they going to do? They're not going to encourage the group to go do something differently. I want this item to make the group go, let's go find aquatic enemies to kill. Let's go find the level that has a bunch of aquatic enemies, not just like randomly. Yes, no, that's true. A +2 striking rune allows you to continue playing the game. Very exciting. Like, for example, it's actually bugged in the original Final Fantasy, the NES version. But the NES version of Final Fantasy has all these different weapons, and one of them is called the Coral Sword, actually. And the Coral Sword does bonus damage against water or water-type monsters. So all the type of things that you fight on the canoe, all the things you fight on the ship, and some other random aquatic monsters. But if you know you're going to be traveling on, and if you're playing a version of the game where the weapon is not bugged, obviously later on there are more powerful items that are just more powerful in general. You probably use them anyways. It's not like it's going to outperform Massamune or Excalibur. But if you are going onto the high seas, or if you're going onto your canoe, or you're going into an area where there's going to be aquatic monsters, you might equip the Coral Sword because the Coral Sword is really good against this. There is a sword called the Giant Slayer Sword, or the Giant Sword. It does basically double damage against giants. There's very famously a corridor inside of the fire cave, the fire volcano dungeon. It's called the Corridor of Giants, and it's a corridor, and every single step is automatically a random encounter with a group of giants. And of course, if you have the Giant Slaying Sword equipped and you're playing the version of the game where it's not bugged, you could do a shitload of damage to these giants, and they're worth a lot of experience points and a lot of, treasure and gold. Level 2 janitor is also, speaking of my other favorite item. We'll cover all this when we talk about Final Fantasy 1, but I absolutely love the heal staff, the heal helm, Odin, the black shirt, the white shirt, the Thor's hammer, all that stuff. I think it's fantastic. Yes. There's actually two. There's one's called the heal helm and one's called the heal staff. I think there's a heal staff and a heal helm, and that way you can actually have two heals. Anyways. All right. Well, overwhelmingly, it looks like blessing and magic item are our potential votes. So it looks like it won't be coins, gems, or arts. It's going to be a blessing or fountain. I'm going to say this because we already have, at least in the way we've written it, because we already have a minor blessing here, and because we have a major or a rare blessing, I think we're going to go with. I think we're going to go with magic item. What do I have to do to hit this? Shortcut. Beowulf voted to just throw it off. Well, too late, Beowulf. I'm sorry. We're gonna go with magic item because I like the idea of something powerful. And again, one of the reasons why I play. See, this is one of the reasons why I like playing old school games is because you don't have to worry about the balance of the game, and you can actually give out fun treasure that actually feels like treasure. And you might say, won't this break and destroy the game? what game is there to destroy? I argue that these games aren't very gamist at all. And as long as you're willing to clap back with tough and, things that could potentially kill the party members and, destroy items and rip their souls apart or whatever like that, like they should have, if you're going to give them all that and you're there to fade all that stuff, then you should be able to give them the really cool and fun stuff that can really, really make the game exciting and change it up and make it very different for them. So that means we're going to have 7 monetary value treasures. Now there might be, remember we talked about this doesn't include the common treasures. Even though Kelsey says in her book, I'm bringing up the PDF so I don't misquote her here. Even though she says in her book that a magic scroll might be normal treasure. Now keep in mind, in old school games, potions and scrolls aren't quite as ubiquitous and common as they are in, modern versions of the game. Like if we go down here and we find, like a potion could make you, fly for 5 rounds or become immune to fire. Like that's actually a pretty cool potion. So like we got to be, we can't just assume that there's going to be, different benefits, for these campaigns. Now, the reason why that I bring this up, this is why I want level 2 January. This is why I wanted to go into this, because I love consumables very much. Like those are the best items to give out in my personal opinion, because that they're one use, as long as you don't make it something that it's like a literally fungible, like where they could just go to town and buy 100 heal scrolls. Like that's going to be a problem. If you make it so that it's just so ubiquitous and so fungible that they can just buy all the things, that does ruin the game. But I like giving out potions and scrolls because I love, like, one of my favorite things ever. And I've talked about this story before, so I apologize if I'm telling it again and you've heard it. We were playing Smith's campaign. This was a 3rd edition campaign. I had a wizard, surprise, named Asinius. And this was the Band of the Burning Hand. Yes, named after a burning hand spell. And we were like, and because of the rules of this game or something like that, like I didn't gain spells automatically when I leveled up or something like that. There was something. Anyways, we were like level 2 or 3, or like level 2, maybe, or 3. We might have been level 2. And this dungeon we had been going to, there was a random encounter. A lot of the random encounter were these orc, there were these orc horse masters who rode around. They were just level 1 fighter orcs who rode around on horses. And they had like 2, because they're level 1 fighters. So they had like, this is 3rd edition. They're just built like a PC. So they had like 2 or 3 feats, or they had 2 feats. And they had like the mounted combat feat and like the spirited charge feat, right? And the mounted combat feat was powerful. You made a ride check to negate hits. And you could drop behind your mount to gain cover against range attacks. And then the spirited charge feat let you do double damage on a charge, or triple damage if you have a lance. So obviously these orcs had, lances, right? They had long spears, and we would see them coming and we had to keep running away from them because they were just so powerful. We go to this dungeon and I find a scroll, an ancient weathered scroll, and I decipher it using maybe comprehend languages or whatever the spell is. And it's a fireball scroll. And everyone's like, yeah, Derek, that's awesome. Like, that's so cool. Like, what a nice thing to save, so that when your character gets to 5th level, you'll be able to transcribe that into your book. As an aside, this is just an aside, even though I've played a lot of wizards in my life, I hate, and I think Smith does too, I hate that you get free spells when you level up. I hate it. I actually do hate it. I know it's crazy. I hate it. As a wizard, I don't like it. I love that you have to find your spells or research them or whatever. Getting them for free, I think it's like playing Candyland. Anyways, I get the fireball scroll and everyone's really, really excited because I'm going to be able to get fireball. And sure enough, later maybe like 2 sessions later, I think we're heading home from the dungeon. And who should appear on the horizon coming at us but the orcs? And I go, enough talk. Fuck this. And I go, Smith, I'm pulling out the fireball scroll, and I cast it. And everyone's like, oh shit. And it's a 5d6 fireball, right? When you cast that, even in 3rd edition, when you cast 5d6 fireball and you're level 5 and you're fighting level 5 monsters, it's no big deal. It's, you know, it's like 5d6 damage, whatever. Well, these were level 1 orc fighters. They had D10 hit points because they were a fighter. Now, they weren't PCs. They didn't have max HP. They had like D10 plus 2 hit points. Their constitution was 14, D10 plus 2. So they had on average 7 hit points. I roll my fireball damage, you know, 5d6, halfway decent roll, 18, 19, 20 damage. Smith goes, yeah, even if they save, they're all dead. I just wipe them all out. A couple of the horses get killed. The rest go running off, whatever. And everyone was stunned in silence. And it's honestly probably it might be my number one moment as a player ever. It was me using a consumable magical item to cast Fireball at level 2 to wipe out those stupid fucking orcs. And I love that moment. That is my favorite moment, like I said, bar none. So I'm really, I like the idea that scrolls and potions shouldn't just be like, go down to the old potion store, get up all the potions that you want, get them all I want, get them while they last. Well, they're going to last forever. I have infinite amounts. But I also don't like the idea that they should be so precious and so important. And the only reason I bring this up is because if they are worth an experience point, that's a lot. And I would be kind of hesitant to give them out quite so handily if there was worth 1 experience point. So that's something that I might have to revisit. You know, Smith says all the time, like his favorite mental image is being a low level character, like a level 1 character, and finding a small, you know, wooden chest, you know, maybe the size of a toaster oven, like a little strong box, and opening it up, and inside are, you know, silver and gold and 2 blue corked potions of healing. He's like, that for me is the quintessential D&D treasure moment. You know, the only other way you could do it maybe is if there was a small pile of treasure, gold and silver, with a couple of gems interspersed through it, a couple of blue healing potions, and then the hilt of a gleaming ruby hilted sword. That might be the only. That's the tier 0, but the tier 1 is just that small chest with that cold and that potions. And I love those consumables. It's so cool to me, and I just miss when those things were like a big part of the game. For sure. Yes and no. I do think magical items should be interesting, and I think that is a good point. I don't necessarily know that they need to come with a curse, but a drawback I think is totally fine. And I also really would encourage you and I would strongly be encouraged that every magical item that we place in this game that isn't a consumable should have like a name. It should have a history. It should be something that is, you know, part about it. It shouldn't, like I said, it shouldn't just be +2 flaming trident, right? It should be cinder tide. Somebody made this item, and if we're playing in a campaign setting where making a magic item is considered to be a big fucking deal, they wouldn't just throw these things out for nothing, you know? That sounds sweet. Consumables are great because they can be high power without ruining the game, even if you way overshot. Right. Worst case scenario, you give the players a freaking tactical nuke equivalent of a magical item, and they use it. And sure, one thing gets completely wasted and had no chance in hell, but that's it. Then it's done. It's over with, and you can move on. The best items to give out because they were never used. Now that is where I disagree. See, I'm not the type of Final Fantasy player who holds on to the mega elixirs until the end of the game and then never uses them. And then I'm like, oh shit, I'm about to die. Well, why don't you use a mega elixir? No, because then I'd have to restart the game because I used a mega elixir. Nope, I use that shit all the time. Wow, that's so weird. Consumables. Those things no one I have played with ever has used. I've tried giving my players consumables various form. They never get used. I play with a bunch of hoarders. All right. You know what that means. It's poll time. I'm assuming for the purposes of this poll that you're a GM or GM adjacent. So when I'll just say your group, I just mean like, you know, your players, the other people you play with, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Does your group use consumables? All right. Resetting the poll. Poll is up. By the way, the reason I had to switch to this poll system is because now we have people in 2 chats. All right. How does your group use consumables? 1, as soon as they get them. 2, strategically. 3, infrequently. 4, never. Interesting. Yes, I agree. Spells as treasure is a really good idea. Also, this is kind of controversial, but I also don't mind the idea, or at least kind of breaking the rules a little bit and allowing non-magic users to potentially use scrolls. Fun D&D side note. Not most, but a lot of scrolls in original D&D could be used by anyone, including fighters. Protection scrolls in particular could be used by any character class, not just wizards. Or not just clerics or whatever. That's pretty cool. I like that idea. So what Beowulf said here is give out a slightly OP magical item, but it has 1 super OP ability. But if you use it, it's like a one and done, and the item never gets, the item is non-magical for that then on. So you have this kind of like break in case of emergency, right? Break in case of fire kind of item. I like that. Really cool. Free spells on level is also a flavor fail on top of a missed opportunities for gameplay awards. Oh, this is when I was talking about how I hate how wizards get their spell automatically. Yes. Well, Hackmaster is a superior game, so that doesn't surprise me. Again, I am trying to put together. Apparently, there is a Foundry module for Hackmaster 5th edition. Is that right? It's like Hackmaster Basic, but that works for my purposes. Hey, what's up, Timmy? Tim, do you know what you're making tomorrow? Tim and I get to make Pathfinder 2 characters tomorrow, but we're also using Starfinder, and we're also using all of the classes and ancestries from Battle Zoo Bestiary, including Eldamon Trainer and Elemental Avatar. Power Made Flesh. We had a blue pearl that let you turn into any blue lyric into reality once. I kind of actually love that, actually. I love the meta-ness of it, especially if your group likes that, and now you're like, oh man, how could I use that? That's pretty cool. Make school treasures a bit denser. You find them in batches of 3 to 5 that are worth 1 XP per batch. Yeah, we could work around it level 2 janitor. I think we could figure out a way to make it work. I don't mind the idea of getting XP for certain scrolls and potions, but I don't want to feel restricted in my ability to hand them out. And Sanjeev says, here I go again. What you just said about having to earn your spells as a wizard, that's Burning Wheel's rule set for the core magic rules. It requires that the PCs actively hunt for spells. So good. And to be fair, that's 1st edition AD&D as well. So, yeah. Thaddeus says the One Ring 2nd edition treasure index. Thaddeus, what is the One Ring 2nd edition treasure index? Hordes, lesser, greater, marvelous, artifact item, precious objects, the treasure index. Finding a magical ring or a famous sword in the One Ring is not simply a matter of stumbling upon an exotic object. There is more to chance than coincidence in Middle-earth, as there are powers stronger that work. A lore master wanting to add spellbound gems and elven blades to a game must take some time to create a treasure index. A treasure index is a list detailing all the magical items that can become a part of a campaign. When something is uncovered with a magical treasure roll, they refer to the treasure index to keep check of exactly what has been brought to light. This allows the lorekeeper to keep a tight control over the desired level of magic to introduce during the game, avoiding the problems of having too many heroes wandering around Middle-earth wielding Balerian forged blades or wearing mithril armor. Oh, okay, I got it. They want you to actually make a list. Interesting. That's kind of cool. I mean, this enters a problem, Beowulf, because they've been sitting there for hundreds of years or centuries, so it is problematic. Numenera did do consumables very well. I completely agree with you, Platinus. That is actually what, that's the, what are they called? The Numenera are called, ciphers? Is that right? Shadram, I think everyone here will agree with you on that. The problem with Pathfinder 2 is Pathfinder 2 doesn't let you give people treasure in advance that would actually be good. So the treasure that they get tends to be the same level as they are, but then it's weaker because if it was as good as they were, they would use it. And so it is a problem. Yes. Oh, I've always let everyone use spell scrolls. All right, well, there you go. For me, there is something to be cool. There's something cool and different about it. That's kind of what makes a potion different from a scroll, I suppose. Right. Is that, a scroll lets you, is maybe a little bit more versatile because you can put more different types of spells and effects on it. And that's something for the spellcasters, and the martial characters can only use potions. But, I fundamentally, I think it's cool that your fighter can use a scroll. Correct. Restrictions on who can use consumable items push players not to use them. I agree. I completely agree. Millhauser's talking about the Hackmaster. There is a Foundry module, but you have to build the non-basic classes from scratch. Okay, that's fine. This is just a demo, Millhauser. I'm not trying to, or Millhoser. I'm not trying to like play the game. You noodled with the Hackmaster 5e Foundry system. Is pretty good. Okay, cool. So Tim is, we're talking about our Pathfinder 2 characters. Tim says, I keep joking about the intelligent weapon trainer as a joke, but kind of want to be Horus the Cleric Quarterstaff 3.0, which would be the intelligent weapon ancestry. Cleric, I would assume. Although Horus was a favored soul, technically, Tim. Now, Derek, that is something I have never actually implemented. I've talked about it. I've thought about it. So the closest I got to it, Tim is in chat. I kind of used a different idea a little bit. Is Tim had a staff. Tim, I don't remember what the name of the staff was. But when we played Dragon's Delve, Tim, now for those of you who don't know, Pathfinder 1, your weapon could be, the weapon bonus could go up to +5. That's like the numerical bonus, +1, +2, +3, +4, +5. And then you could also have up to +5 bonus of effects on it. So you could have a +5 flaming, which is worth 1, keen, which is worth 1. I can't even think of other things. Frost, which is worth 1. Dragon Bane, which I think is worth 1. Undead Bane weapon, because that's a total of +10. Anyways, Horus, Tim's favored soul, had a staff. And the way that the staff worked is as he went down through the levels of Dragon's Delve, on each level, there was a place where he could empower his staff further. And every 2 levels, there was one of these like kind of shrines that made his staff get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. But I do like the idea of maybe a magical item that is a limited use. You use it once, and then you have to find a certain place in the dungeon to sort of reset it, which I think is kind of an interesting idea. I really like tying abilities and stuff like that to the dungeon itself. Treasure can't be good because then people would use it. It's such a PF2E thing. Yeah. The charges. That's right. That's why the most important thing was the charges. Oh man, George, I forgot about the charges. lot of staff. We use this random magical item generator in that campaign, and for some odd reason, it generated an unbelievable number of staffs of swarming insects. Yeah. So, anyways, I think these are all really, really cool ideas, and it's already 10:30, and I'm obviously, we've got a long way to go. But what this stream should highlight is how absolutely insane I am, because this is the kind of stuff that I think about when I think about the playability of a dungeon. It's breaking down these rewards in such a discrete fashion that we can create an enjoyable play experience. But I want to set this up, and I want to then let the players go, and I want to let them do their things, right? We're talking about level 1 being somewhere between 30 to 35 rooms. Now, imagine if your group went through, half of them, leveled up, was level 2, and now there's better treasure, better experience, more experience down on level 2. You could go to level 2. You found the entrance to level 2. But maybe you've learned about or have heard rumors about this mythic treasure that's back on level 1. Do you stay on level 1? Do you keep returning to level 1? Especially if you're playing in more of a Western Marches style game too. Maybe when there's a session where not everybody can make it, and you go, hey guys, you guys kind of want to go back to level 1 and search for that mythic treasure we never found? Yeah, that sounds good to me. So there's a cool way that you can, that you can use these things to drive player activity, because ultimately the whole point of putting these rewards in place is I want my players to know about them. And they may not know exactly where they are. They may not know exactly what they do, but they have to have some knowledge of what they are and where they are. Because if they don't, this information is meaningless. These rewards don't work. The rewards work because I want to encourage, I want to drive the player's activity and get them to make plans on their own and make, strategies and heist and come up with cool little ideas and use the knowledge of the dungeon that they are gaining bit by bit, piece by piece, to sort of attack it in a way that is interesting and cool to them. And again, you might say, well, my group's completionists, they're just going to sit on the same level until they get everything. Okay, that's fine. Why is that a bad thing? As long as they're having fun, right? Isn't that the whole point? As long as they're having fun. But I'm telling you that eventually most groups, will eventually get bored, because if they were to literally pick up every piece of item, they would be leveling so slowly at a certain point that they might get really frustrated, and they go, fuck it. They completely clear out level 1, and then now they're level 3, and then they start at level 2, and then they get this far, and now they're level 4, and now they're level 5, and now they are leveling so slowly. They're just like, I can't stand it. They're like, let's just go down to level 4, and then they're like, let's go down to level 5. Okay, cool. But if your group literally wants to sit there and, earn a trickle amount of experience points, and they're all fine with that, and they're all having fun with that, and I think that's good. Would you include some procedures for creating those magical items tied to the dungeon, or just create them and have a set amount of items present within the dungeon? Which procedures? The One Ring ones? No, I wouldn't necessarily use the One Ring index for this game, because the One Ring magic items are supposed to be extremely rare. Actually, fun bit of lore about the hopefully people don't Google it because people might be able to. Okay, so in the Fellowship of the Ring, not the movie, the party, ignoring that Gandalf is a Maya and thus has existed since the beginning of time. Technically, Gandalf doesn't really exist until the Third Age, right? Before that, he is Aloran. What is the oldest item in the Fellowship? Or what is the oldest thing in the Fellowship? Does anybody know? Now, Jackaldor Moon says Narya. And here's the thing about Narya. Narya is a ring of power wielded by Gandalf. Narya was actually forged before the One Ring. So technically, it's older than the One Ring. But these were forged in the Second Age of Middle Earth. My man. Luke got it right. The Ring of Barahir. So a couple things about Narya and the Ring of Power. Glamdring and Sting, which are, Frodo and Gandalf's weapons, really, were originally forged in Gondolin in the First Age. So actually, Glamdring and Sting, the sword of Frodo and Gandalf, are actually older than the One Ring by many thousands of years. But Aragorn's non-magical ring, the two serpents with emerald eyes, one consuming, one being consumed, is actually older than almost anything in Middle Earth. Honestly, it was actually created before the counting of years. It was actually created in Valinor. Actually, it's actually one of the oldest items in existence, and it's on Aragorn's finger. And it's that thing that Wormtongue describes to Sauron that makes him think that he's found Isildur's heir. But yes, it is actually. It's not magical though. But in Tolkien's universe, it's not magical. Obviously, in D&D, it would totally be magical. But good on you, Luke. All right. So overall, I think we. I don't know that we covered a ton of design, but we're getting there. We're thinking about it. Poor guy, Rangers and loot, huh? All these years, he still hasn't found a magic ring. No, Aragorn kind of gets shit on a little bit because when everybody else is getting magical items from Galadriel, he's like, my niece already loves you, or my granddaughter. I don't know, it's not his granddaughter, but it's like, she might be like my niece thing. Already loves you. You have the greatest love of all time. I don't have anything to give you. And he just doesn't get anything. Now, to be fair, he eventually does get Andoril at the end. So he gets the glow up there when he gets the Narsil reforged. But of course, remember that in the books that happened much earlier. And actually, in the books, Aragorn is actually walking around with the shards of Narsil in his sheath. Is it her granddaughter? That's why I was like, is it her granddaughter? Is it her niece? I can't remember the exact relationship, but you're right. It might be granddaughter. I should know my elven genealogical charts. Galadriel genealogical charts. All right, here we go. Fingolfin, Finwë. All right. Finarfin gave birth to Galadriel. Galadriel and Celeborn gave birth to Celebrian. Celebrian married Elrond, who had Arwen and Dumnio. Yes. Okay. And Elrond is a child of Eärendil. Right. Very cool. So yes, granddaughter. Arwen's mother was Galadriel and Celeborn's child. Good stuff. Maybe we'll get out the graph paper in episode 20. Yeah, well, before we bust out the graph paper, we'll definitely be busting out like node structure. Which reminds me, actually, let me see if I can find this. Node. I can't remember what it's called. Did I bookmark it? Maybe I bookmarked it. There's a really cool website I found that like makes making point crawl system's really easy. I can't remember it right now. Well, while we're wrapping up here, any thoughts on what I should make tomorrow? I mean, I'm probably going to do my own thing, but again, we're playing Pathfinder 2. We pretty much can be anything we want. I don't know what the rest of the group is going to be. And they've had some conversations about it. I haven't dug too deep into it. I need to do that tomorrow. But yeah, because we're kind of in this like weird fantasy world where like there was a terrible apocalypse and everyone's like DNA got sort of splattered. What else should a level contain besides treasure? Well, challenges. If that's what you mean. Beta book Starfinder 2. So beta book Starfinder 2 to be replaced by the actual Starfinder 2 book when it comes out. I played a fighter. So I did play a fighter. And yeah, everyone said, "Oh, summoner, psychic, beast gunner." Obviously, yeah, no. I think somebody. I mean, I'm kind of tempted to be an Eldamon trainer, but I know someone else mentioned that they wanted to be it. The problem, like I said, is that a lot of the Eldamon abilities, because they were designed by Mark Seifter, use a very, very grid-centric idea. And I don't know how well they're going to translate into this version of Pathfinder 2 because we are doing it mostly gridless. We're doing it kind of very loosely zone-based. And that's just because we have a player who's remote and we want to make it easier, faster to sort of deal with it. I don't know. What are some good classes? It's still so wild to me that Mark Seifter apparently plays mostly gridless. Right. Yes. Well, no, he plays with a grid just only in his mind. So it's grid of the mind, not theater of the mind. It's grid of the mind because they play like fully the way that you and I would use a grid. They just do it mentally. Like those people that can play multiple games of chess in their heads. That's a Starfinder 2 class. Right. Mark's a smart guy. He went to MIT. All of his players went to MIT. Like, he's a smart guy. Ken asks, how many factions do you think you will have in the Megadungeon? We're going to use I can't remember what that shape is called. It'll be like a bell curve, I guess is what it really is called. But we're going to have less factions early on, more factions in the middle, and then less factions at the end. So you're going to have factions that, in the beginning of the game, we don't want to overwhelm people. We don't want to give them 38, factions that they have to deal with. The first level might have, now there might be some core factions that potentially last for a good part of the game, but we might have somewhere in the neighborhood of, we have 11 levels, somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 factions would be my guess. 25 to 35 factions. Some will probably be single level, single region factions, minor factions. And we'll have some major factions that, control maybe an entire or really important to an entire level. And then we'll have the campaign factions that may not necessarily go from 1 to 11, but have multiple areas, Yeah, but a lot more than that, I think. Because the idea here is we don't need it, 3 or 4 in the whole dungeon. No. That's not even close to enough. It's not even close to enough. No. And like I said, there'll probably be very few factions that you start the game with that you'll end the game with. Like those storylines, if you will either been put to bed or not even an issue. Because if you had a beef with a faction earlier on and never got around to finishing it, by the time you're like level 8 or 9, you just go back and just like wipe them out in like one session, which might be a fun way to spend an evening. So at a certain point, the factions don't really matter too much. And if the faction is an 11th level faction at the beginning of the game, they'll just come and wipe you out. So it doesn't really make much point there either. So we kind of have to segregate it in that way. But yeah, so maybe like, again, level 1 is weird because you're going to have some of your factions from the outside, but level 1 might have like, 2 to 3 factions, and then like level 2, which is a bigger level, might have like 4 or 5 factions, and then on level 3 we might have like a couple more. And again, some of those factions might stretch across multiple levels, but yeah, somewhere around 30, we'll say, on average. And again, I don't expect the players to deal with every single faction. They're not there to solve every problem. They're not there to right every wrong. They're not necessarily even heroes. Shadowdark doesn't even have this idea that your characters are necessarily heroes. You could become one if you want to, but you aren't necessarily one right off the rip. And in fact, good, isn't really an alignment. You just have chaotic, lawful, and neutral. And while there's still sort of that old school idea that chaotic is evil and lawful is good, fundamentally there isn't good and evil. Alrighty, folks. Well, I think that's going to do it. We've got a lot more things to discuss before we actually finally make sense of this. But this is good because a lot of these streams are laying out the groundwork and the foundation for what is going to become the play pattern going forward. And I should also note that to a certain extent, if I were to do this, as many of my patrons would like me to do, or at least have said, hey, that'd be cool if you did it. I don't know if they want me to do it, but they said it would be cool if I did. Is if we can get, say the first couple levels built, them and we think it's fun and we think there's a cool idea here. Maybe that is something we take to a Kickstarter or backer kit before. We don't necessarily have to finish the whole thing, but I would like to at least have a good 30% or 40% of it finished before we would go do something like that. But yeah. Well, I'm trying to figure that out, Beowulf. I'm still struggling a little bit with my anxiety some days. As I'm sure you can imagine, I was kind of have it under control, and then my life got out of control. So some of my anxiety symptoms have come back, and streaming has helped with that, which is good. But I mean, the other thing is too, realistically, if I did a Kickstarter and was able to make $20,000 or $30,000, in one go, that would be a really nice way to boost up the income for the year and try to make ends meet. So it might be a good way to do it. And again, I don't make 5e content theoretically, so it's kind of tough otherwise. What I meant is, what's on the checklist of things, places, entities on a single level? I assume you will then spread it out with a layout. I still don't. I hope I'm not being obtuse here. I still don't quite know what you mean. Like, we're gonna have monsters. We're gonna have traps. We're gonna have puzzles. We're going to have lore. We're going to have, most rooms in our dungeons should serve a purpose. That may not be logical, but from a game design perspective, I'm a big fan of not having a ton of empty rooms. I think they're boring. I think it's lazy design. I think having a certain amount of negative space can be useful, and I think it's okay. But I think mostly you're looking at this place as a play experience. And when players get into the habit of every time we enter a new area, it's just a dust-filled empty room, I think that's really, really disheartening and really, really boring. And it's just a great way to pad out the count. And, we have 500 rooms. And it's like, okay, but you have 500 rooms, but you only have 230 encounters. I think it's very lazy design. So, yeah, I mean, monsters, traps, challenges, puzzles, hazards, lore, safe spots, magical vaults, the basic rigmarole, secret doors, secret passages, play cycles, lock and key cycles. We kind of started to talk about cycles a little bit. We should totally do it. I'm in to help if you will have me. Well, again, Pathfinder PhD, it's especially if I'm trying to sell something. I mean, it's one thing to, I think if anything, what will end up happening is we'll have a lot of need for play testers. Yes, I will. No, I will not populate it on the fly. No. I would create a dungeon play space and then fill it with the items that it would need to meet the requirements. At that point, we start to think about it, and we might change the layout if we need to fit the fiction. Because, I mean, eventually we do need to make this thing thematic. We do need to make this thing interesting. If you just have a bunch of rooms and that are just fights strung together, nobody will find that interesting. Right. Video games that have claimed to have vast open worlds, but they don't fill it with anything interesting. I fundamentally believe that the dungeon lives and dies having interesting encounters in interesting rooms, you know? Okay, Stan. I kind of get what you're saying. Yeah, we'll have a good idea of what we need to put in, and then once we have the layout design, we'll go through the checklist and put them in. Right, Todd. I'm right with you. If it's empty, the empty might not mean it has treasure. Empty might mean there's no monster there, but it has lore or hints, foreshadowing, history, explaining some information, the presence or absence of a faction. Those are all very informative. Even the room should. When I say empty, I mean the classic. You know, the room full of dust, a handful of bones in the corner, and a rat skeleton. And like, I just despise those rooms. The Plains of Karana. There's some stuff in the Plains of Karana, but it is a whole lot of nothing. That is very true. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for hanging out with me tonight. Again, shilling. If you would be so willing and so gracious, if you enjoy this content and you wish to support us, and you want to do so for free, head over to twitch.tv/Knights of Last Call. If you have Amazon Prime and it's linked to your Twitch account, which only takes a couple minutes, you can give us a Prime sub every month for free. You get one Prime sub a month, and if once a month you can be bothered to maybe throw us your Prime sub, it doesn't cost you any money, but it means a lot to me, because if a couple hundred of you throw me these Prime subs, that pays for my health insurance, so that's pretty sweet. So big shout out, big praise to everybody who's doing that and helping me. It means a lot. I understand money's tight and not everybody can join the Patreon. Not everybody can throw a super chat or a tip. And that's okay. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're part of this community. I'm glad you're in these live streams. I'm glad you're enjoying the VODs. But if you appreciate me and you have this ability and you're already paying for Prime, I would really, really appreciate it. I mean, Tim is bringing up the world's largest dungeon. That is the quintessential book. They made this book, AEG made this book called The World's Largest Dungeon, and it was this massive dungeon. And I'm not even shitting you, it was like 60% of the rooms were just empty. And not like empty roll on a table. It was just like they were just empty. It was like such a bait and switch. It was horrifying. And I just absolutely, you're paying for this stuff. Why is it there? Praise the Shill Father. Yes, the evolution. Shell Father's evolving. It's become Shill Father. Shill Father used beg. It was super effective. Look, I am one step above begging, okay? You know, it's scary to lose your job and not have a source of income. Luckily, like I said, the channel does make some money. So actually I'm in a pretty good boat, all things considered. So, but I still lost a ton of money from losing my job. Still, Shill Father is charging up for something. Good stuff. All right, everybody. Is there a crab Eldamon? Maybe make an Eldamon trainer. I mean, I think the Eldamon rules are cool and awesome, and I might, I could see if somebody else wants to be the Eldamon trainer, that's cool. I would totally be like elemental avatar is the name of the class. By the way, fun side note, while Whoopestein is here, while I have you all. So our Northern Reaches game, or our Northern Reaches Season 3 campaign was so popular that it literally caused the Forge, the people who host our Foundry games, to reach out to us and basically say, you're killing us. We have to ban you because you're just using our game too much. And Smith, to his credit, basically reached back to them and said, look, that's fine. We get it. what can we do? And they're like, you can't do anything. And Smith's like, I think that sounds stupid. Why don't you escalate to somebody who wants to make money? So they escalated, eventually went to the CEO of Forge. And because Smith said, we understand that we are not the typical Forge user. Do you have an enterprise level option available for people like us? And they said, no. And Smith said, so you'd rather not have our money than create an enterprise level option. Well, eventually got to the CEO, and the CEO said, we'd like to work with you. We're going to create an enterprise level option. Maybe it's the Knights of Last Call level option. But they literally had to create a new category of max tier subscription for Forge for us, because we were using so much of their services, because we've been running so many games and so many people have been online that it was, crushing them, and their Amazon Web Services fees, I guess, were through the roof. So, I mean, I hate to say it, but I think when they set up their business model, they assumed that you were going to have one person who was going to be running 1 or 2 games a week. And they were like, cool, our business model will be built around that. We'll have one GM who runs a game for 4 or 5 friends, maybe once or twice a week. And suddenly you have 30 games in the first week. So, you have 3 or 4 games a day, and they're lasting multiple hours. And you have people who are online tweaking their characters and making updates. And so because of the actions that they're taking in town, which is handled in Discord. And, their system was not designed for that kind of popularity. So it is how we roll indeed. Yeah, Wobblestein, I'd love to talk more about it. I mean, we're, maybe after we finish up level 5 and we're on to level 6 here in a week, so 2 weeks, because next week I'm going to be in PAX. I will be around Tuesday. We did get that tip goal finished, and I did reach out to Bob while we were on stream, and I said, hey, we just finished a tip goal. And so it sounds like Bob is going to try to make next Tuesday's stream. So we'll see what we'll get into. So it should be a lot of fun. All right, everybody. This weekend, not sure. So tomorrow, I'm playing D&D or Pathfinder 2. Well, Starfinder 2. Well, we'll find out. Pathfinder 2. Let's just say Pathfinder 2. I'm playing Pathfinder 2. Saturday, I don't know if I have anything Saturday, but Sunday, I'm running Torchbearer again for my community, for my patrons, and my Sunday campaign. And so I should be fairly busy this weekend, so we probably won't have a stream until next Tuesday. But, you never know. Monday I might be bored and we might be on, because I will be in PAX at the end of PAX East at the end of next week. And but there might be a stream for PAX, so we'll be good there, yes. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me tonight, and we'll see you when we see you next time on Knights of Last Call.